information to work with. With poker, it's almost all luck. There's a little skill involved, but
I sat down with him and watched him lose all his money doing poker. Like I was sitting next to him.
This is true. I went in short stack and just got rocked.
Yeah, those guys would definitely be bullies at those tables. They're like, we've been here a while, we got the money. Unless you were buying in with like bukus, they were just gonna
next time I go, I'm dropping 400. I'm not gonna baby it in and
that's
get
exactly
blinded out every time.
Yeah, those guys,
I got draft. Oh god, I was just gonna say DraftKings tried to sponsor me, and I was like the nicest, most passive aggressive email I've ever written. Like, hey, I think your company is evil. No, thank you. But then they're like, okay, what about a debt relief company? I'm like, I don't know if you didn't read my previous email, but this is also terrible.
I would have been like, yes, give me the DraftKings. Code Gibb.
I'm just looking on sports betting because it's like I don't know. It seems so. It's like so scammy. It reminds me of meme coins and like rug pulls. I'm like, it's like the house is like always gonna win. Like this. I mean, I guess people should be allowed to do it because they're gonna do it. But like at the same time, when you have all these apps, like there's way more of it happening. Like we don't have to have it.
You say that. So I do a lot of sports MMA sports betting. We'll just do this little thing and then we'll get started. But I do a lot of MMA sports betting, right? And there's a website called Best Fight Odds, and it'll have every website's fight. Well, not every, but it'll have like 10 or the 12 top fight odds. And so what you do is you have an account at every one, and then you just go in there and bet each fight with the best odds. And I'm hitting at like 82% for the year, and I don't follow it nearly as closely as I used to. And that's like not even counting rounds and methods, which you can like double up on. So it's like if you're not over here just expecting to win like the big bucks, and you're betting smart, and you're like, oh, okay, this one's 10 to 1 underdog. Yeah, he's probably gonna lose, but let me put some big money on that, and I'll cover it with the lower ones. You can make money. It's just like,
well, what's your return? Like, is it more than a savings account? Is it more than a bond?
Since 2009, I have made about like 123K in sports betting. Like
yeah, but how much did you put in?
Like
percentage wise, what's your return?
2,000 was the original investment.
Oh, okay. Holy shit. Yeah, I mean, I guess everyone listening, go sports bet.
What the fuck?
Yeah,
that's the lesson we're taking away.
I bet on 8 to 1 odds on the Giants against the Pats in 2009. And so then that turned into $2,000, and I took that original $2,000 and I was like, okay, when this runs to zero, I won't gamble no more. Yeah. And I don't know.
I have a good sports betting story. If you guys know how sports betting works, I had a 11-leg parlay Korean baseball that I placed drunk at 2 a.m. while I was in law school, and I put 10 cents on it because DraftKings will let you make 10-cent bets, and it was just all I had in my account. It was an 11-leg parlay plus 67,000 odds, and I woke up and it hit, and I was like beside myself because I won like $70, but that was off 10 cents. I was like, God damn it. But at the same time, I never would have placed that bet for real money. But I hit up DraftKings to get a screenshot or like a printout of the betting odds that I hit, and they said they didn't have it anymore. I was sad.
So you're saying is you made that all up and it never happened?
No, I have witnesses.
He's immediately spent it all on alcohol and
you can subpoena people, and hopefully you believe them.
Well, that's perfect.
These are all survival stories. Don't gamble, everyone.
Yeah, don't gamble. Let's move into the topic here. Another form of gambling. Whether or not we're going to see take bets on if we're going to see an investigation and prosecutions into the Biden cognitive decline and the subsequent potential elder abuse and treason and all that good jazz that's going down. Let's get into it today. I'm pretty excited to talk about it. I am going to put a foot down in a rule going forward for this one and tonight for the second panel for these two specific topics. I don't want to hear one goddamn word about January 6th. And otherwise, because otherwise we're just going to only talk about January 6th and we're not going to talk about any of this. So that's only a rule for today. It's not a rule of perpetuity for the two panels today. So, okay. Now, we'll start with Lactoid. Do we think there's a criminality involved? Should there be investigations? Should we prosecute? What do you think? Go ahead.
Yeah, am I coming through okay real quick?
Yeah, you sound
okay? Everything good? All right.
Yeah.
Frankly, I don't think so. I think the whole thing was this is a pretty sad affair. I think Biden is not really to blame for a lot of it, unfortunately, because he's experienced such a steep mental decline and other health issues. But when we're talking about like legal responsibility, charges being filed, I guess my first question would be against who and under what theory. And this hasn't really been explained to me. And I've done some research on this, and this really hasn't been explained to me in a way that makes a lot of sense. I think that there's a lot of parties that need to be condemned very strongly for covering up Biden's decline. Merrick Garland comes to mind. as somebody who refused congressional subpoena in order to hand over the Her report audio, which has been leaked, and it turns out it's, like we thought, horrific. So a lot of terrible stuff there. In terms of something prosecutable, I've yet to be convinced.
All right, thank you so much, Prime.
Oh, me. Hi. Thanks for having me here. Nice to see all of you. I only don't know one person, Soy Pill. Hello, hi.
We've
Nice
met
to meet
before. I think we were on a panel once, but hi again. Yeah.
I mean, it was the most special time of my life, and like I've been thinking about you for all this time, and we're finally reunited. Yeah, I mean, if anyone here is familiar with me, and all of you are apparently, then maybe you'll know that I have the deepest contempt for Biden. The absolute deepest contempt. I want Biden to be charged, not necessarily for this. I mean, for war crimes. But I don't know. Like, as our friend Lactoid, who certainly knows better than I do, under like what laws we could charge Biden for this specific thing, for lying to the American people. I don't know how that would work. I would love to be convinced. I'm open to it, but I don't know. That being said, though, I disagree with my friend Lactoid on like accountability. Biden has agency. Biden's mind isn't so gone, right? He isn't so isn't so degraded to the point that he had no idea what was going on at all, right? Clearly, his will has gone into his administration and the notion to run again, right? They didn't literally puppeteer him the entire time, right? To get him to run again for all those months. No, that was definitely him. So he has accountability for that, and so does fucking Joe Biden, right? If I could charge people, Joe Biden would also be on that list as well. But as far as I know, I can't, unfortunately.
All right, we'll get into it. And I mean, we could talk about the war crimes thing, I'm sure, at some point. Let's go to Pentuple.
All right, this one's a little wordy, so bear with me. But I actually agree with Lactoid, so I'm going to take a different approach here. May it please the court. Ladies and gentlemen of the chat, Your
Fucking
Honor,
nerd.
Admiral, opposing counsel, I stand before you today as an attorney for the truth, not in a court of law, but in the court of public opinion, to charge the Democratic Party with cap in the first degree. It's a calculated deception to conceal Joe Biden's profound mental and physical decline and manipulate our cherished democracy. The Her report, no surprise to MAGA headquarters, vindicates our claims of their lies and Biden's incapacity to lead. To prove this crime, I shall establish 4 elements. First, intentional deception. Second, material misrepresentation. Third, knowledge of incapacity. And fourth, harm to the public. The evidence demands a guilty verdict. First, intentional deception drove the Democrats' campaign to hide Biden's declining health. In June 2024, videos from the G7 summit in Italy captured him wandering aimlessly, unable to follow proceedings. At a Juneteenth celebration, his halting steps sparked alarm. Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre dismissed these clips as cheap fakes and accused critics of exploiting his stutter. This calculated tactic misled voters and stifled scrutiny of his physical frailty, which hinted at deeper mental decline. It propped up the party's false claim of his competence and set the pattern of deceit. Second, material misrepresentation marked the Democrats' lies about Biden's mental and physical health. Biden swore in his 2020 campaign to be open and honest about his health, promising transparency to earn trust. Yet, the evidence reveals a stark betrayal of this promise. The 2023 Her report leaks, fully disclosed this May, exposed Biden's mental incapacity. He could not recall key dates, his vice presidency years, or even when his son Beau died in 2015. Democrats brush this off as trivial, deepening their deception. They claim his May 2025 late-stage bone metastasized cancer was a sudden diagnosis. You'd have to be incredibly gullible to believe that this president and his doctors were unaware of such a cancer throughout his presidency and campaign. Its years-long development exposes a deliberate lie. Democrats were not open and honest, shattering public faith in their leadership. Third, the knowledge of this incapacity was undeniable. As we tirelessly warned at MAGA HQ, yet the Democrats continued to prop him up to cling to power. They dismissed his debate collapse, where he stumbled over words, lost focus, and spoke incoherently, as a mere bad day. But this excuse defies reason. No party would abandon a candidate mid-election over one misstep. They knew his mental and physical decline was chronic throughout the primary process. The Her report's evidence lays bare Biden's failure to recall vice presidency details or even basic policy milestones. These stark lapses confirmed his unfitness. Democrats concealed this reality from the primaries onward. They prioritized their agenda over the nation's welfare, betraying every voter's trust in leadership capable of betraying every voter's trust in their leadership. Fourth, harm to the public arose from the Democrats' lies exposed by the Her report. They skipped the 2024 primaries, knowing Kamala Harris's narrow appeal could not survive a fair contest. They forced her in during the general election to protect their White House administration. This theft of voters' rights to choose a candidate worsened by hiding Biden's mental and physical incapacity, shattered trust. It scarred our democratic ideals, and the betrayal undermines our governance, leaving a nation questioning its leadership legitimacy. This historic fraud demands accountability. Who ran our country when Biden was unfit, signing actions with an autopen? This crisis shakes our republic's foundation. Every element, intentional deception, material misrepresentation, knowledge of incapacity, harm to the republic, is proven. I ask you, chat, to return a guilty verdict for the Democrat Party for cap in the first degree.
Very strong opener. We're going to see about them capping. Let's go to Katya.
Okay, so I'm going to agree with the previous speakers that there's not really a precedent for criminal charges here, nor do I see a way that they could be pursued that would not, implicate a lot of other things and create a standard where, it's difficult to prove whether something was intentional or unintentional and to what level and who you would even bring charges against. But what I am going to say about the situation is, I say that to blame for this situation is him for refusing to drop out, his close advisors and family for gassing him up on that. And those are the ones that I feel like have the most kind of mens rea situation. My cat is scratching the back of my neck. Okay. Mens rea situation of actually being behind knowing what his condition is and, misrepresenting it to others. As for how media apparatuses and how individuals reacted in reaction to that and saying that he's okay, I am going to say that they were acting for the most part reasonably. Because the way I see it, if we were in a position where he's not okay, but he's refusing to drop out, refusing not to run again, and refusing to step down, the problem is, I feel like they were working under the assumption that if they were to blow the whistle about something that they were not 100% sure of, which is him not being okay, even obviously it's, reasonable for them to be pretty sure, but 100% sure, for the most part, no, especially when narratives from those who he talks to were coming down saying he's all right. So if they were to publicize and say, hey, Biden's not okay, guys, Biden's not okay, and he refuses to drop out and takes that to the election, then I feel like they were concerned about sinking their own ship completely if he did not drop out of the election. So the way that I feel like is individuals weren't necessarily acting within a malicious or conspiratorial thing, but just believing what was told to them what was said by those who he interacts with, because not believing it and coming out with a contrary narrative could have obviously caused a electoral terrible situation that ended up happening anyways, but for a different set of circumstances.
All right. Thank you so much. Sorry, Bill.
I'm glad I'm going last because it seems like everyone's on the same side of the prompt, which I guess we'll be talking about something else then. I'm not going to defend his mental acuity. I think we all saw him slowing down in real time. And yeah, there's a lot of problems that they had for the Dems once they locked Biden in. But it's political suicide to say, yeah, this is our best option and he's in severe mental decline because he's old, as Katya was kind of touching on. I will say, Prime said, I think it is overblown insofar as I'll joke about him having dementia, but if you listen to these Her tapes, just because it doesn't fill you with confidence because he is a doddering old man, he does not have dementia, literally. I know people with dementia. I've seen Ronald Reagan in his, second term. The dementia is a much different thing in real time. And some of his responses are still much more coherent than a rambling Trump statement, despite his mental acuity clearly being worse. But yeah, speaking of dementia, I don't think covering it up for Reagan or Woodrow Wilson or FDR's health is some unforgivable crime. And it's for the optics. And ultimately, I don't think this had a huge impact on the decisions being made in the White House. A president can do things unilaterally, but he's surrounded by aides, advisors. They help with every decision. And I have yet to see some evidence that Joe Biden was so mentally unfit that he did something completely and totally out of the norm. But maybe Pentuple has some evidence of that, so I'm willing to have my mind changed. But yeah, this is more of the fact of like, this is just bad. It looks bad. If you're gonna never trust Jake Tapper or any of these media people ever again, like, yeah, don't. Like, these people are totally self-serving. They're narcissistic. They as soon as it now benefits them to come out and bash him, they're doing it. But they were willing to lie to you, and even though everyone could see with their eyes and ears, yeah, this man is a fucking bumbling fool, especially during debate. So yeah, as to the debate prompt, I don't think there's a strong case for giving people jail time. I don't know. It sounds like both lawyers also don't think so. So I feel a little more confident in that, especially considering they're not on my political side, but I don't blame the Democratic Party for not shooting themselves in the foot during a presidential campaign. And I guess we're going to have to talk about that and what should have been done in this case. Because, yeah, in terms of the prompts, yeah, it doesn't sound like anyone really wants to press charges.
Well, some people do want to press charges, so we can talk about that. Don't worry, we're going to work through this a little bit. Yeah, first degree cap. But I just posted an article from, Prime wants to press war crime charges, so I guess that's two different separate charge takes. But first, I posted an article just now from 23 hours ago, and it was just reiterated on Fox about 23 minutes ago. But one's from Dr. Elaine Healy. And she talks about how Joe Biden is the case of Joe Biden shows all the classic hallmarks of elder abuse as someone that works as a geriatric MD. I've heard several people. Trump has pushed this idea. This guy's pushing this idea, or this woman's pushing this idea. I don't. What are our thoughts there? Is elder abuse something like as a possible? It doesn't seem. I mean, y'all said y'all doubted it, but what are y'all's thoughts on this?
What's the abuse?
Yeah. Well, they use them for their financial or societal power.
Even if you did, it wouldn't be related to him being like, she wouldn't be under elder abuse because she like convinced him to run for president. It would be like because she is like abusive and
she's signing
any other way that anyone else could be charged.
Well, let's tie it to Prime's thing right here. So if she found out, and we found out that he didn't actually know what was going on in Israel, and she's signing off on all sorts of weapon sales to Israel or something, and he's like, he doesn't even know what's going on, and she's like, yeah, go ahead, Joe, sign it. Wouldn't that be abusive to just get the doddering old man that doesn't know what's going on signing things?
I don't know if I would.
I just don't know if you can apply this. This is like a banking thing.
Yeah.
It would have to be against his interests, right? It's like Joe Biden's like, well, I really want to stop the Gaza thing, and then like everyone's like, yeah, Joe, we're doing that, and then signing something that's the complete opposite. But again, that's why I'm like, if you can show me evidence of like Joe Biden's either will being subverted, or like that he's like, oh well, Joe Biden was really tired this day, and he like got really close to nuking Iran, and they had to pull him away from the nuclear football. Like show me something that like where this had a material difference on the outcome. That's when I would say maybe criminal charges could be fired.
I wouldn't want them charged for that though. If they
hold on, I have an example.
Really? Well,
pull them away from the nuclear football.
Sorry, yes, that I would not want the charge for. But obviously, the covering it up so much so that the president, who is supposed to be the unilateral decision maker for some of these things, like vetoing bills, for the nuclear football,
pardons.
It's like the pardons, exactly. Like maybe we should not allow people to cover that sort of thing up. Like that, I don't think that at the very least all these people should be fired if it was that bad. However, I have yet to see the case where his mental state was so poor that they were just literally puppeting him like a total buffoon.
I have an example to give you for that argument.
Wait, real quick, let me concede. I know Obama literally puppeted him off stage because he couldn't find his way.
No, that's not the one I got. This will be a good one. So June 7th, and here maybe you have an explanation for why this doesn't apply as evidence of this. But sure. June 7th, at a rally in Wisconsin, Joe Biden declares in person, I am staying in this race. I am staying in this race. 2 days later, on Twitter, he drops out. This seems logically like he had his hand forced. Like he's out here saying,
he was definitely pressured. 100%.
I'm staying in the race, and then like he's saying, I plan to stay in the race. I am staying in the race, and then 2 days later on Twitter, not even coming out on himself, not even coming out on his own to do it.
That doesn't make any sense. Like, how
you're saying that him staying in is elder abuse, but him being told to get out is also
I'm not talking about elder abuse.
Yeah.
I think what he's saying is somebody else hijacked the Twitter account.
He asked for an example of like Joe Biden's decision-making power being usurped from him. And I'm saying it appears that his decision-making power was usurped when he came out and said clearly in public, I am staying in the race. And then 2 days later on Twitter, it comes out that he's dropping out.
you can put political pressure on any person to get them out of a race, right? Like, yes, the will is subverted because now all my friends have ganged up on me and told me you have to get the fuck out, right?
He's already the nominee.
So his
But hold on,
decision making.
what
Wait,
pressure
Powell,
can you put on the nominee?
can I clarify?
This is-
I want to
this is
clarify to
what I'm
Pentuple what my
proving
question.
with the
No,
example.
Pentuple, I understand what you're saying. I'm not saying like, okay, what did anyone defy Joe Biden? What I mean is, was his mental state so poor that at some point he had some duty as president that he said, "Hey, I want this done. You know, I want this bill vetoed. I want this signed. I'm like some auto pen," which he did not approve of. He did not actually like know about this, which is much different than, at a certain point, everyone realizes this is politically untenable. Sorry, Joe Biden, we're taking the keys away. You can't drive the car, Grandpa. Yes, obviously that was against his will,
well,
but that's not really what I was meaning.
Well, Trump has one soy pill.
Well, then what evidence could possibly meet
we
what
have
you
one from.
requested?
We have one from
yeah,
Trump.
like
We have one from Trump. I'll give it to you right here. Trump says, hard on crime Biden suddenly wants to have soft borders. Yeah, that's treasonous behavior. It wasn't Biden allowing these people in.
That makes
His
sense,
underlings were doing it. And you can't tell me hard on crime Biden suddenly is just going to let all the illegals in. That's what Trump just put out in a tweet like, 2 or 3 days ago.
I believe he said that.
So you know.
this is the was this the open borders tweet you sent in the chat?
It might have been. I've set up a couple things in there.
Again, to Pentuple's point, maybe I have to hear more about this, but my idea of what evidence could change my mind here, if Joe Biden had a very specific statement about a policy he wanted to say, or like a bill that he's like, I will veto this bill, and then it came out with his signature that the opposite happened, and he seems kind of confused about this, or like, well, I don't, no, to be fair, you could probably find him saying, oh, I don't remember signing that, because that's probably true, because he doesn't, but the idea of like his specific willpower as president being subverted, that's not the same as forcing him to drop out, which I think is... Yeah, you could have done that with anyone, like Kaya said. So.
You look confused a lot, though.
Yeah,
Right.
but-
Well, he's always
Any
confused.
presidential candidate could have been
We're pulling
forced
somebody
out.
aside.
Let's go to
Hold
Prime
on.
here. Go to Prime. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So one, I don't think, unless I'm missing something, and I would love to be corrected, because again, I hate Biden, and so I'm willing to believe lots of bad things about him. Right, I'm open to it, guys. Right, but as far as I know, I haven't heard any evidence that someone else like was signing bills for him. You know, like that the president was incapacitated.
Well, you acknowledge that he signed a lot of things with AutoPen.
That doesn't mean anything. But that
Him
doesn't
and
mean
everyone
does that
else.
mean
It opens the
someone
door to the
else did it?
question. Because if he
As
signs it
soon as-
himself, we don't have the question.
Oh, no,
right, but
AutoPen
Pentuple,
is
it's like,
fine.
but did it
AutoPen
prove
is like-
anything, right? Like,
AutoPen is
I'm not
fine.
saying it does, but
Hold on,
just to say,
let
oh,
Prime-
it's the
let
same,
Prime-
there's
let
nothing
Prime
to look
finish.
at is obviously just not.
Hold. Let Prime finish that. Go ahead, Prime. Go ahead.
As far as I understand, right, and I'm willing to be corrected. AutoPen is a legitimate way of signing bills, right? Like from a
Yes.
distance or whatever way they do that.
Correct.
So if we know, if anyone can show me that happened by someone else's hand, it wasn't authorized or however that works, right? Then yeah. Great.
That's what we'd be
but
looking
then
into.
on the other, but back to something was said before to our friend Katja. Hello, hi. Hope you're doing well, friend. You talked about like, well, during the election, the electoral disaster already happened, right? You know, like it happened near the end, and you know, like by the summer, you know, he was simply forced out, and you know, we were in the situation that we were in. But the lie, right? The lie that got us there, it didn't happen in 2024. It wasn't like after the debate, everyone's like, oh, yes, he's in mental decline, right? No, like this was
Well, that was the first time Democrats admitted it, for sure.
They were denying it vehemently.
They were literally
Yeah,
denying
no,
it.
hold
They
on,
accused us
guys.
of bullying him for his
Guys,
stutter, cheap fakes.
Guys, hold on. Let me finish. I'm already on your side there. Like, you're not fighting me on that. That's what I'm saying. Like a lot of the Democratic leadership was lying, right? Then the media was lying. I'm on your side here. But like this was known and this was denied. That's when the lie happened years ago, right? It happened honestly during the first run. The first run when he actually became president, right? That people were talking about his mental decline. So that's when the harm happened. And then to be honest, why it happened, why it continued is for the most mundane of reasons. Because it was to the benefit of everyone around him, right? Like any star, like any celebrity, right? They have a crew around them. They have an infrastructure. They have people who make money off of their managers, right? And their publicists and all that stuff, right? And when we're talking about the president, we just call it his administration. Those are the people who, they want him to run the first time, right? Even though he was in a clear mental decline, because there might be a chance we get into the White House. Once they're in the White House, the only way to continue that gravy train to not get replaced by the next person's administration,
or to let another Democrat in through the primary.
Right? It's just
that doesn't keep
for the
them all in.
simplest reasons. For money, and they lied the entire goddamn time, right? So this wasn't something that just happened last year. No, this has been happening for a while.
Right, which is what I said. I just think it's in a different way when you're talking about after versus before. Because, okay, so if we're going to go chronologically, right? I feel like while he was running the first time, there were a lot of exaggerated claims about mental decline when he wasn't necessarily that mentally declined or in any sort of crazy state while he was running for president in like 2019, 2020. That was not the case. People will say it, but no, he was relatively fine at that point. To the same standard of who he was running against, like nothing was too crazy there. And then we go forward. We start to see things that are concerning about his behavior, about him forgetting things, about this, that, and the third. But we've seen all of these things in the past that seem to be like, exaggerated. And, he seems to be doing a good job. He's getting things passed that people are a fan.
Remember, hon, do you remember, right? Like how the first run happened. It happened from the basement. People were talking about it then, right?
From the basement.
How, like, they kept him away from the public. It was a basement run. He did so little press, right? And then finding out afterwards, right? Now that we're getting the leaks from the White House, from the former White House, they're saying, yes, we did everything in our power to hide him away, right?
Right, but you're telling me something days, right? That's a different thing than what I'm saying, because I'm saying people's public perception from what they saw. No, it's not the same thing, because from their point of view, they did not necessarily see their reasoning behind the scenes.
No. Whose point of view? Sorry, whose point of view are you talking about?
I'm talking about individuals like voters, and then I'm talking about media people that aren't directly in the White House.
I'm talking about the people who are. One second. I'm talking about the people who are directly in the White House. The people.
Okay, so that's different groups of people.
Sure. The people who had money to be made. These.
Well, and also me. I saw it.
I mean, yeah, we also. But to piggyback off what
me and White House staff, we all
right.
You
guys had a biased reason to continue with those news stories, especially considering that right-wing news outlets were the ones really carrying that one. And even before it was, it was pretty obvious, or even before there was any real reason to be saying that he had cognitive decline when you're speaking from the outside. I actually disagree with what Prime said as far as when he was saying that people convinced him to run because they had money to be made or whatever, for continuing to be in the White House.
I didn't say anyone convinced him. No, I said the opposite.
Okay, the opposite. Yes.
He's a narcissist. And I think he desperately wanted this for years, for decades, had been trying to be president, right? And once he had it, he wasn't going to let it go. So like I said at the start, right? It was his will, his agency that caused him to run again, right? He was simply encouraged and empowered by people who knew better and who lied to the American public about it.
Well, let's talk about that. Let's talk about that a little bit. So, I feel like there's, I see some DOJ people talking about the elder abuse thing. At what point would, let's talk about fraud. At what point would this be like a fraudulent thing? To be lying to the public, saying, "Hey, like maybe even like the media would be someone charged as opposed to like I don't know the actual staff. Like what would the burden be here?"
I have a question that might be
not on the media.
Well, because
I think they were lied to more than they knew firsthand.
You think so? Because like it seems like you see people like Morning Joe go tippy top shape, then the next day going, "Oh, that was pretty bad," Like that seems like it's like a clear deception or deceivery. Like when George Clooney's saying, "Hey, there's something's wrong," and then the next day, Morning Joe's like, "Best shape he's ever been in. This guy is sharp." And then like how much is that really?
Well, so there's like a difference, I guess, between like fraud in the colloquial sense and then fraud in like the legal sense. Do I think it's a fraud upon the American people? For sure. There was like a lot of people lying and a lot really bad deception going on. Do I think it's fraud in a legal sense? I don't think so, right? Because you can always hide behind, well, I thought he was sharp. My definition of sharp is really, really low. You can be as long as you're above a potato, you're sharp to me.
Yeah, if you have Joe Biden standards you answered every question, Joe, and that was great.
Yeah,
so
that's enough.
Biden's decline can be summarized in a single word.
After Trump, after all these people, after like the situations we had with past presidents, the health problems that we've seen, in situations like back in the 1940s, like with the situation where the president's health was kind of hidden from the public there with FDR. Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm stuttering. Oh my god, I'm Joe Biden. But okay, legitimately, I do not have dementia. But actually, being real, like the standard for presidential behavior, I believe, has been set too low. And you know what? As somebody who's lived my entire life in one of the oldest on average counties in the state of Florida, I'm gonna say that I'm kind of black-pilled on the elderly. Okay, like we've seen this over and over again.
Well, to y'all's point, though, y'all just made the case about the Jill Biden thing, and that was actually in that article that that was one of Dr. Healy's major things, was this is exactly the kind of behavior that people that are committing elder abuse do, which is, oh, he's just so bright. You answered every question. That's the standard, when it's clear that's something they would usually use as a metric to, like, decide that if they're being abusive or not. Like, how can it be both things here? How can it not be like, oh, if it's fraudulent, they actually thought this, and then, at the same time be like, oh, this is a clear indicator of something else.
Well, Gibbs, the question is, once you've picked your primary candidate and you're about to go against someone and what you mostly and constantly declare is the most important election and fascism will take over, at what point do you think it's politically viable to say, you know what, also, by the way, the guy we picked is fucking dying? Even if it's true, what point is that politically viable? I think the one argument for that is that when he did finally drop out, which was entirely too late, there was a swing in Democrats' enthusiasm of, oh, holy shit, maybe we're going to get a little authenticity, because they all knew, hey, this guy's a doddering old fool. This was for polling for months and months and months that, hey, his age is a problem. It wasn't some secret. And that's the thing is, you want to talk about the media covering it up, but this is more like, your gay son or whatever keeps having guys over and locking his door, and you're like, oh, he finally comes out to you 5 years later, you're like, Dad, I'm gay. You're like, yeah, I fucking know, dude. We all fucking saw it. You've been having guys over locking the door and shit. The problem is not nearly so much the cover up, but how politically viable it is to just lie to everyone, and just everyone views the Democratic Party, or at least these media pundits, as completely unreliable. And you want to talk about crime, probably not, but you want to talk about hey, should we ever listen to these people again? No. So yeah, I just don't see how this is relevant to talk about oh yeah, it's elder abuse. It's more of just hey, we really let the people down with our candidate, and how can we avoid that in the future and regain their trust?
Right. I think that's where you go from now. But when you're talking about political viability, then you need to talk about the alternative as well, which is the point I made earlier when it comes to let's say they did the opposite and he didn't drop out. They had to either wait until it was completely undeniable to the fact where it was we're fucked if we don't expose this right now, or until there was a good reason to believe that he would drop out if he were pressured. If it seemed like he was going to stay in, then I feel like we would be having a very different conversations, and Democrats would be having a very different conversation, an alternate universe where this shit was exposed, but he just put his foot down, dug his heels in the sand, and just said, nope, I'm running. But then before the actual election, we had months and months and months of he's not fit, he's fucked up, he's dying, he's got dementia on both sides, and then he loses by 10%. Then we'd be having a very different conversation right now. So I think the media and individuals who were not seeing Biden every day were more inclined to believe the official narrative and to cover some of that stuff up because they wanted to avoid that sort of scenario from happening, which is why I put most of the onus on Biden.
Let's go to Ike out here since he just got here. Let me get your thoughts. What are your thoughts on all of this so far? Should there be charges pressed? Go ahead.
Yeah. So when I look at this topic, the question for me isn't which side do you believe on whether or not their person is sundowning. The question is, what solution can we put together to make sure something like this can't happen? And because it seems to me that person, woman, man, camera, TV is not sufficient for either side, right? You could have gotten either side to say those 5 words in a row. So what do we need instead? Do we need a commission? Clearly, it can't be run by the executive branch, especially if the executive branch has unitary executive theory, which believes that the executive is whatever the president wants, because that's not going to work. Should it be run by the by the legislative branch, by the judiciary? Should there be some like independent like arm from one of these that handles these things? And that being the case, since we don't have a time machine, we would have to implement it now, today, right? And I'm for that. I'm 100% for that. I was for that years ago as well. I was for
proposed
that
the
with this
25th
president,
Amendment.
and I'm for that currently. So my question ultimately is, what's the solution?
25th Amendment.
Well, why wasn't the 25th
25th
Amendment
was
used
not
here?
sufficient.
That clearly wasn't good enough.
Good
Yeah.
question for
25th
Kamala,
didn't
which
work,
we could
but
ask
Biden-
her, right?
He's still there.
You might have won if she had done it earlier. Who knows
Wait,
how
is-
this would have all played
I
out.
That's not a
also
policy.
Is
Like,
she the only one who could have raised any concern?
Yeah.
Yes, having a better vice president is not a policy, right? The policy is
No,
what
the
can you
policy would
put
be
in
the
there
20. What do you
that
think the 25th Amendment is for? Why did we pass the 25th Amendment? What do you like? I don't understand. This is literally explicitly what the 25th Amendment
No,
is.
it wasn't. First of all, it wasn't. It was in case like there's a critical heart attack, you physically can't do the job anymore, right? And
Okay, well,
clearly,
that's not
we have
how it's
too many
written.
people who would have to agree that
no, but okay, go
were
on.
in that spot in order to pull the trigger. Nobody was able to do it under Biden. So clearly, the 25th Amendment isn't up to the task. It's not good enough. But there might have
According
been
to
an
what? That's not how
independent
it's written.
council that we can put in place, one that could require that the president get a checkup once a year, and that the results of that checkup be publicly made available, so that the American people can have ongoing consent when it comes to the what's going on with their president. 25th Amendment clearly proved that it was not enough to solve this problem.
That's a good point,
let's,
actually.
That's because Kamala failed the act.
One second.
That's not because the 25th Amendment wasn't available, and it is clearly for this. And the way you're interpreting it is not correct.
Well, we'll
it's
come
funny
back
how
to that.
Democrats will
Hold
interpret
on,
the
we're
birthright citizenship. Oh, you should have written it better. But then when they want to interpret something, they just use their.
If it's dependent on people recognize it when.
Hold on, everybody. Hold on 1 second. All right, let's get Mr. McLaughlin in. Well, I'm sure I butchered your name again. One day we'll get it. But let's get what your thoughts are. Should there be charges pressed in the Biden cover-up case? And I guess the 25th Amendment is what we're on now currently. But go ahead and give us your thoughts on it, and you can.
Yeah, man. Happy to join. Can you hear me? I'm on my backup mic.
You sound yeah, great.
Okay, fantastic. Yeah. Well, it's been a rough week for me. I'm partying like 2021. I've got COVID, which is retro, but unlike the Biden administration, I'm admitting that I have it. So it is something, at least. I think that political prosecutions have proven to be terrible. They're terrible for the party that does them. They make the other side really popular, and they're really bad for the country. So no, there shouldn't be charges. Could there be charges? Yeah, probably. Unfortunately, we live in a country that has so much federal law on the books that a creative prosecutor can find a way to charge just about anything. So could they find a way to charge it? Yeah. Should they? No. And I'll tell you what I think. If I was Trump's legal advisor, what would I do? I'd have hearings. I'd have big hearings in Congress. I'd get all the information. I'd call witnesses. And then at the end of the day, I'd offer pardons. And it would be politically brutal, because then you're in the position of saying, yeah, I'm going to accept the pardon, which basically in terms of politics is just as much a win as a conviction. Or, I deny the pardon. And then if you prosecute, it's maybe a little bit less ridiculous. But barring some kind of tactical move like that, no, I don't. I think that if we can move past the age of political prosecutions, that would be great. And if
Ryan, can I poke a hole in your idea though, please?
That'd be even better.
Yeah,
I'd like to poke a hole in your idea, Ryan, because your idea is, hey, these political persecutions would be really, really bad. However, it would be great if Trump forced Joe Biden into either accepting a pardon that admits his guilt or gets persecuted. I think that's probably also bad, and you would think that's bad, right?
I think that's this is why Nixon was pardoned, right? Is that it is better to acknowledge that there was wrongdoing. There was something that was done that was not good.
Okay, under the premise of everything that's happened is like at least to some degree really, really bad, and they should. Okay, I understand a little bit more.
Yeah, and then once you admitted that, the actual prosecutions, like actually putting political opponents in jail, kind of make us a banana republic. It's not a good look. So if we can avoid that, but actually get some admission that this was a problem, that would be great.
Ryan's
spitting right now.
No, we actually have to be able to put people, bad actors who happen to be politicians in jail, right? There is
Only
a
if they committed
sense
a crime.
if they commit a crime,
Well,
that's what I'm saying. But if there's no crime to commit, then there's no pardon to even be had here, right?
Yeah.
This assumes there's a crime, so that's what I'm going off of.
Yeah,
But
pardon
anyway,
would be
like
double
if there
use.
is an actual crime, right? Then for the sake of the public in our institutions, we need to be prosecuting bad actors, right? The actual original sin happened when we didn't prosecute Nixon. When presidents who've done done awful things don't go to jail. It breeds a sense within the public that these people are untouchable. That voting is pointless. That our democracy is a figment, right? So for the democracy, we actually should be prosecuting. Absolutely.
Can I ask the panel? Actually, this is what I wanted to ask before, Gibbs, and this idea of like, okay, like we're looking in the past of this is clearly a democratic fuck up, whether or not it's criminal. But I think to a similar degree, and again, I wouldn't even necessarily blame the party for this, but the amount of covering up or at least playing defense for Trump's very clear lack of coherence, or even like his health when we look at like the health reports from these doctors that are very obviously not true. We're like probably lying about the height and weight, and like, yeah, he's perfect, he's the most healthy man I've ever seen, and actually coming out and admitting, yeah, he wrote this and I signed it, sort of thing, from his doctor. Would you say that like we should be applying the standards that, and maybe this commission you were talking about, or any of these other things to the current administration now that this is kind of what's happening now?
I mean, I want to engage with that just a little bit, even on the mod here. I want to say though, I've heard this argument a few times from people on the left, right? And what's interesting to me though is okay. Prime came in earlier and just said, when Biden ran the first time, what was the comment? The basement. That was the thing. We was running from the basement. Trump, like, what did Trump do yesterday? All right. Do you think that Trump? Whose idea do you think ambushing the South African prime ministers was? Do you think that was Elon's doing?
Almost definitely.
Probably, right? But it was definitely how it was done. That was 100% Trump. Like, we're gonna have him here. He's gonna have his people. What we're gonna do is we're gonna dim the lights and we're gonna show him these things. We're gonna have him live react, and he's gonna look bad. Who do you think plotted that? That was absolutely Trump, right? So when I see him do something like that, and I see him like on TV all the time, and he's talking, and it's, y'all can say he's declined. I think it's more of a strategic choice. I don't think he's actually mentally declined, despite, I know y'all will disagree. Like, I don't know that even if we did do what you're asking, it would come out with the results that you're implying. Like, I think,
Okay.
He's
agree
declined
and
a
say
bit.
we
We should definitely apply
Well,
the
the more
same
reason-
scrutiny,
yeah.
but I don't think the truth is the same on both sides. And I
Yeah,
think
but
that this
I
is
don't think it's a
also
one-to-one
going to
double,
hold back
because-
Democrats, because they need to really. I think one of the biggest problem for the Democrat Party right now is that they're kind of just still not facing this mistake that they made. However you want to frame what happened with the Democrats over that last election cycle, until they actually acknowledge and address what happened. Like this is why like your leader is like a defaulted leader, because nobody's stepping up to actually champion the party. It's like, is it AOC? Like, who is it? Like, who's the face of the party? It's just whoever like ends up with it, because nobody wants to actually step up. And even once you guys get somebody to step up, by the way, still not a guarantee that they're going to be able to do the job. Your last person was Kamala Harris. Enough said.
Look, that's the
I
thing.
agree.
When there's
I think
political
that-
malfeasance, there should be a political price to pay. And I'm sure
so-
they're going to have hearings, and I'm sure they're going to call witnesses, and I'm sure they're going to dive into this deeply, and it's going to be very embarrassing for the Democrats. And I think there will be and has been a political price. I just think that's sufficient. Like, I think that, this sort of thing, like you want the remedy to be political, not to have it be criminal. And as a lawyer, and I see Lactoids nodding because he knows this too, because he's in the same business. The problem is that our prosecutors have so much discretion now. They have so much power to charge anything because there's so much federal criminal law that once you get into the business of prosecuting political opponents, it never stops, because all of you on this panel probably violated 3 federal laws today. I don't know what they are. You don't know what they are. Nobody knows what they are, because nobody in the world even knows how many federal criminal laws there are.
This is a
Nobody knows. It's a total
hold on.
mystery.
No, we can yes. We have a huge federal code, right? We have a huge federal criminal code, but when we're talking about prosecution, we're talking about harm to the public, right? When there is a crime that has harm to the public, or like apparent harm to our institutions, when the public, right, can feel that it has been harmed and then nothing is done, yeah, that's an issue. right? And again, there has to actually be a crime. So it may not apply to this particular situation, but in another situation when a crime has happened and the powerful get away, just like it happened at the end of the 2008 financial crisis, right? Like no one went to jail. Like the powerful didn't go to jail, and it instills in the public a sense of injustice, a sense that of unfairness, and that like the system is broken, right? And when they don't have faith in that system, then the conclusions they arrive and how they vote, all that changes. So no, it absolutely should be instilling justice. That's what the justice system is for. How can it not apply to the most powerful people? That's crazy.
Well, the Supreme Court said it doesn't, actually, to be fair. So
I don't know if these would be official acts or not. But Prime, just to, we're not going to be able to give you a satisfactory answer here. I'm not going to be able to give you an answer where, there's the line is completely delineated here. What I think what Ryan is saying, and what I'm saying too, is that there is a massive trade-off that happens when you say we're going to, yes, justice, we're going to go after political people because hey, they're just like us. Nobody's above the law. Because their concern there is the playbook might be followed that has been played out in every banana republic and every authoritarian country, which is we're going to hyperfixate on little crimes or arguable crimes or massive stretches like this thing here with Biden's dementia, all right, or mental decline, right? We're going to hyperfixate on something where somebody may have done something, but we're not actually concerned about justice here. With why we're going after this, we're going after this because fuck Biden, right? That's ultimately the motivating factor. It's the same reason why they went after Trump in New York. Right? And that was a big criticism I made about going after Trump in New York.
This is what Comey literally said about Hillary Clinton.
None of that matters. None of that matters.
It does matter. Wait, can I need to add? Let me add something real quick. Prime, let me add something.
Behind why you're doing this is everything in the law.
Let Prime respond, then we'll go to you.
Sure. Yeah. Of course that doesn't matter, because you're saying that yes, some people could use the tools of our institutions improperly. Yeah, whatever.
Yes, they do.
Right?
That's why they have to take an oath to not violate.
And that can happen without a valid prosecution. It can happen with a valid prosecution. When you do it with a valid prosecution, when that actually happens, then yes, the public can see that justice has actually been served.
Have you ever been in a ride along? Have you ever been on a ride along with a cop?
No, Lacto. I haven't been on a ride along with a cop. Why would I be on a ride along with a cop?
Then you lose.
So, well, a lot of people have had this experience where a police officer will say, we'll follow this guy around and eventually we'll find something to pull him over. And they will. At some point, you will find a reason to pull somebody over.
No.
Is that fair? Do you want the cop following you around the whole time you're driving?
Initially, you missed what I said initially, right? I said, particularly when we're talking about these crimes, something where the public has obviously been harmed. So that's, and I admitted to, was it Ryan's point that yes, the federal code is large and you can find something, just like you're just saying now, right? A cop can always find something.
But what kind of harm?
Pretext, right?
Yeah, but here's the thing.
Yeah, sure,
you can make the argument that any harm is all harm.
Sure, I can.
You could say, oh, the harm because this person made an improper left turn. There could have been a kid there.
Okay, great. Then I can do that for you, right? Then we can actually define it. We can actually pick out laws, right? We can say, hey, these are laws for politicians. If you break these laws, then you will be prosecuted. That's another thing we could do, right? There's all kinds of ways we can actually deliver justice, give the public a sense that everyone actually is accountable to the law in some way, right? Rather than just throwing up our hands and saying that, well, I guess if you do happen to make it into office, then it's weapons free. Do whatever you want, because there will be no accountability.
Nobody's saying that. Let me respond real quick.
Well, who's Bill?
I said the line here, like it's not delineated very well. Like I agree, there are times like when a politician does something so egregious where you're like, sorry, dude, like we would prosecute anybody who did this. This is fucked up. But then there's the other side, which is we're going to reinterpret statutes to get this guy.
I agree.
We're gonna apply shit that we've never applied to anybody else to get this guy. And
it's going to happen any which way.
Well, no, you're saying it's going to happen every which way, but like we saw this shit with Trump in New York. We're seeing this shit, potentially seeing this shit now with Biden.
Yeah,
that's not good. That's not healthy.
You could use your argument to justify literally anything, any twisting and turning. And
they're doing it now.
Okay,
they're doing it now.
Hold on. All right. Let's go to soy bill.
There are degrees.
We're gonna go soy bill. We're gonna go Katya. Then we're gonna go to Mr. All right, we're gonna go.
Yeah. So I do want to build a bridge here because yes, I see Ryan and Lactoid's point to the idea of like, yeah, I don't think that we should set the precedent of locking people up insofar as, yeah, like if you really look at these like 34 felony counts, yes, did he break the law? Sure. However, is this something that anyone sincerely in the Democratic Party who like knew about and cared about before this? Probably not. None of these people are like, yes, the business fraud. That's what we're going to get them on. What they care about. Hold on, wait, let me finish. What we care about, what is like the the institutional destruction, like the subversion of powers and checks and balances. And yeah, what to their point, you probably could, just like with Biden, get him on the documents thing. That was the whole her case, right? It's like, hey, like he messed up in this, and is this really something worth throwing Joe Biden in jail over? I would say probably not, and I would agree that would probably set a bad precedent. But I agree with you, Prime, and I like that you added this, that yeah, there are some things that we should just be like, ultimately, if you do these things as the executive, you should be prosecuted for this. For example, inciting a riot to overturn the election on January 6th, Admiral Gibbs.
He broke the rules.
Katya, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead, Katya.
I mean,
in contempt.
A lot of the discussion with this is a thing from way back, and I'm going to tie it into this. It seems like, as far as when we're talking about the Democratic Party, it seems like what they did here was they behaved in a way that I believe was reasonable for somebody acting in their own political interest. They did a gamble, they lost, and then the consequence, which people are saying, I don't remember exactly who said it, that they haven't faced any consequences or they haven't realized any consequences. There was a giant consequence called losing the election. That might not have happened if they forced him out way ahead of time, or replaced him with somebody else way ahead of time, or convinced him to drop out like way ahead of time, like prior to the primaries, and they just had other people run. That might not have happened. So again, gamble, lost, that's the consequence.
Hold on.
But the gamble was like
This is over. We can just pretend
hold on. Before I move it on, give it over to Mr. Ryan here. I gotta ask you a question.
Okay, either that or forfeit the election.
Let me ask you a
Nobody
question.
in the right
money I made was
hold on. Let me ask you a question, Katya. You just said they acted within a reasonable expectation for someone to stay in political. I mean, in that case, I didn't want to bring this up, but I guess I said we weren't going to bring it up. But say, I could argue January 6th, if you'd sent the National Guard in and conquered the Capitol, that would be a reasonable expectation of someone wanting to stay in political power. I don't know that that's really a good argument there. Where's your line here?
I'd say that there's a difference there because what I'm talking about is media choosing to believe an official narrative, even if it's contrary to what they're physically observing.
What about the cabinet? Wouldn't that be a coup in all but name? Hold on. If the cabinet is ruling,
right? I'm saying that. I've said that he's one of the ones who's.
Well, if the president's not actually in charge, that's the same as if Trump took over the Congress, right? Well, what's the fundamental?
Again, I believe that he had agency. I don't believe that he was being puppeted by people, or he had zero mental acuity to do anything, and it was just that sort of Weekend at Bernie's situation. I do not believe that. I believe that he was stubborn and being narcissistic and believing him to be in a better state than he was. And by the way, when I was talking about people, or I was talking about the party, or I was talking about the media, I'm not talking about people who see him every day. I'm talking about people who believed what the narrative was from the people who were lying deliberately and ran with it, even if contrary to what they were seeing. I'm saying those people were just acting in a way that I believe was reasonable for somebody who was acting in political interest, as opposed to, going against the narrative that was the official narrative and tanking the fucking election for their own party. Are they high?
George
Why the fuck would they do that?
Let's go to Mr. Ryan. Go ahead.
So I totally agree that political problems need political solutions, and there was a very steep price tag on this. I think for a lot of people, and I know I don't know everyone's politics here. I'm somewhat politically homeless. The fact that I didn't feel like I could trust Harris was a big factor, and part of the reason I couldn't trust her was because I felt like she covered this up. So I think there really was a steep price tag to pay. But just to like go back to the previous topic of should we prosecute this stuff and should we hold people accountable under the law? I think if you game that out, you run into the situation Lactoid was describing, which is that every single administration comes into power and just targets the administration before it. And that actually does more damage to the rule of law than holding people accountable would be. And if you game it out even further, here's the real stupid end game. Every president on the last day in office pardons themselves and everyone in their administration for everything. And then you can't prosecute them. Or
wait, Ryan, at the beginning of when you hopped in, were you not advocating for Trump to bring charges against Biden to force them into a situation? Okay.
No, he said to not. He said he should
not advocating for that.
Yeah, okay. For hearings.
I thought.
And
then a pardon implying that if he denies it, there should be charges, right? Like,
if there are wrongdoings that can be legally identified, then you could still identify those without having to prosecute. You could still say, "Hey, public, here's what happened."
Let's let him finish.
Acknowledge this.
I only want to remember his statement.
Let's let him finish it. Go ahead, finish out.
Yeah, it's worse than that because this is how cheap the rule of law would become in that scenario. Every single president on the last day of office would either pardon themselves or step down and have their VP pardon them if you don't think they can pardon themselves. And they would just say, wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Oh, I did so many bad things. Oh, look how terrible it all is. I'm pardoned. It's all gone. And that would solve the political prosecution problem, but it would do it at the cost of the entire validity of the system. It's like an insane end game, and we cannot go that direction. It just doesn't work.
Well, Ryan, I'm a little confused by your reasoning because you're saying if we have every VP or every president pardon themselves or self-pardon through the VP, that's going to destroy everything. And the alternative being let them do whatever we want. Everyone knows that they're doing whatever they want and getting away with potentially crimes, but they're not pardoning themselves, so it's okay? Like, I'm not quite sure I understand.
Not getting away with it, paying severe political prices for.
Well, they're not, though.
You're already a two-term president. What's the price to be paid?
Yeah, like what's the downstream effect on it?
If you're second term, what's the price to be paid?
And the price he paid was.
Do you think Biden didn't pay a price because he wasn't on the ticket?
If Trump is now a two-term president, at the end, what's the price to be paid politically?
I certainly don't want Kevin guys to take power, so we still have an interest in him.
Hold on, let Ryan.
What is the price to be paid?
The price is paid by the party. You lose
the party. He doesn't care about the party. If you're a narcissist like Trump, who doesn't give a fuck about anyone else, what do you care about? The party pays the price. That's crazy. We already live in the reality that you're talking about. Nixon wasn't charged, right? He got away with it. And then what happened later on? They charged Bill Clinton. They charged for sleeping with a woman, right? With like fucking another woman. Like we were talking about.
Yeah, he shouldn't have lied about. He should have owned that shit.
They started with a real estate deal. Like they thought it was a bad real estate deal that the Clintons did, right? And then that led to murder. But none of that happened. They went on a field hunt, and then they eventually found the blue dress, right? And then now all of a sudden he's being impeached. So we already live in that future where like the powerful people aren't charged, but the things are actually.
Well, he lied in front of Congress about it.
Yeah, because impeachment is a political cost. That's not a criminal cost.
Yeah, you don't go
to jail. The example that you just gave is proving my point, not yours.
But I'm saying that, like, you're saying that
that's a political cost.
Oh, well, yeah, but did Bill Clinton really have a bunch of downstream consequences from this? Like, I don't think it really changed much. And Trump was impeached twice, and he got elected again. Like, it's not.
It doesn't matter. But they were. Hold on. I mean, but my point is,
I can't control how the impeachment process turns out. His example does nothing to prove the
But wait, Prime, can I just say, because this goes back to the original question. No, it's not about help. It's like
I'm not. Hold on 1 second, Sway. I'm not talking. My original point was that they started that prosecution looking for a criminal, right? They said they thought that Bill Clinton killed him and Hillary killed a man. I know who I'm talking about. I don't remember the guy's name, right? They thought they
Vince Foster.
Vince Foster. And once they couldn't find that, that's when they eventually found the blue dress. And what they settled for was an impeachment. But that wasn't the goal from the beginning, right? So we've already been in that point in time where we don't get valid prosecutions, we still get invalid prosecutions. That happens right now. So why don't we have valid prosecutions as well?
What's invalid for perjury?
Valid prosecution and
Are we saying we can't have that?
Like I don't even understand the categories you're drawing.
What Prime is saying, correct me if I'm wrong, Prime, is like you're arguing against going after maybe a Joe Biden or a Donald Trump for any and all crimes that might be like egregious enough to literally like, hey, this isn't just like some sort of procedural thing. This is like really, really bad. And Prime saying, look, the precedent's already there. They did this with Bill Clinton, okay? Like they went after him some bullshit. Like the way that they found this perjury started off with something completely different. They sought out to get this crime. So the precedent's there. Why don't we actually prosecute the things that are worth
they
prosecuting?
They weren't going after Vince Foster. They were going after Whitewater, which is a totally
right. But the point is something completely different from the inevitable impeachment. And also, again, just to supplement his point, the impeachments clearly do nothing. There's no consequences are faced by this. And yeah, you can say, yeah, I don't control that. But I personally, as a voter, would like to see presidents held accountable for things that I think are worth, throwing them in jail for, whether that is a Democrat or a Republican.
I don't think anybody's talking about complete immunity from any kind of criminal charge.
Okay,
but I think Ryan is.
Don't think there should be fishing expeditions.
Well, hold on.
So what I said before, can I explain what I said when I said what I meant.
So lactoid and then iCal.
What I said, the line here is that, like, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think everybody here does believe there are crimes sufficiently high that a former politician should be charged for them. What our concern is like there's no hard and fast rule here that we can like actually codify to say like, well, this is on one side, that's on the other.
Why not?
We do that.
They do it in Germany pretty well. Why not?
Because it's impractical. No, it's impractical here. It's impractical here because what we're seeing right now is people going after people for things on the other side of the line. Right, we're already past that line now. And the concern is like there needs to be a shift. There needs to be a shift. I think what we're arguing for. Maybe we should go back to like for how long it was. Just go back to this time that we only prosecuted politicians for when they did the actual shit that like they should be prosecuted for.
Well, it seems like you're having it both ways. You're saying that we can't draw a hard line, right? But we should go back to the days when we only did it for bad things. We should be on the other side of this line that you said that we can't draw. Like, help me out here.
So the police example, right? When you're the cop car when you're following a guy with a cop car, if the cop pulls them over, it's probably true that the person did break a law. And you can point directly in the statute, they made the wrong left turn. However, the idea that you have a cop car who's has motivation now to tail somebody specifically looking for them to do something wrong, like without a basis, is like if that was like very common, which in some places it is, this is a concern. And I don't like that. I don't like that the actual motivation here appears to be something else other than like this actual dedication.
Lactoid, that's Prime's point. That's already happening. That's already happening with these presidents.
Hold on. This actual like dedication to justice. What I think what we're saying is that right now where we're at is we are well beyond this actual motivation of some kind of dedication to justice. This is prosecutors running on prosecuting somebody politically. This is people saying, well, maybe we can find a crime here that like somebody related to Biden did regarding this, but like there's really no kind of like evidence or like sense of justice, but we can find something, right? It is like Katya said, it's a fishing expedition.
Well, okay, hold on. I want to ask a question because that's something I want to ask. Then we're gonna go. Well, I'll let you answer this like Toy, but and maybe Katya even. But I do want to go to ICAP this. So the word fishing expedition, right? Well, what is a fishing expedition? Like, are we saying like, oh, well, I don't think that seems pretty like subjective. If I was like, oh, I think that we should investigate, these people for treason for signing things without Biden's consent. We need to open an investigation into this. Some might go, that's a fishing expedition. You're just looking for a crime, right? Versus others would be like, no, I think we really do need to investigate if people were doing this and Biden even knew what was going on, right? Like, so how do we, like, I guess kind of what Prime was even hitting at is like, where is this arbitrary line if it's already past it, like you're saying? I don't like, sure. How do we decide what's a fishing expedition and what's not?
Discussion we were
no. Well, hold on. This is the practice of law. This is the idea you gather up evidence for your argument. And then if you have a shit ton of evidence, you make the argument. This is why I think this is treason. We have really good basis here. This is why we should investigate. This is why it merits looking into this. Yeah, you hit a certain threshold, and I could be convinced. And people's lines here are going to be different. I understand this. What I'm saying, you can't have like a objective, hard and fast line. But
well, wait,
in our opinion,
can I give an example? I want to know if you agree.
The New York thing was bullshit. I mean,
no.
The Biden thing is bullshit.
I can
but can I give an example real quick, Lactoid? So in Germany, the way this works, you might disagree with this, but I think this is pretty like principled in terms of how thick they draw this line, which is if any party is running on a platform that is tantamount to dismantling the democracy that would otherwise elect them, that party becomes illegal. So the Nazi party in Germany is illegal because the Nazi party runs on a platform of, as soon as we get elected, we're going to dismantle the parliament and completely restructure the entire government and take away all your rights, right? And so they say, look, you just can't do this, right? Like there's a hard, fast line to like, you can secretly have that opinion, which is kind of what the AfD is doing, but they're kind of treading the line now. They might have been, deemed right-wing extremists, and they might also get banned. I'm curious, what do you think? Like, is this like an example of, hey, look, we have a very, very strong line of, if we can show you, maybe it's treason in America, maybe it's not this right-wing thing, but it's, hey, if you did commit treason, like by the letter of the law, then no, you can never be president again, and we're going to prosecute you for it. Like, what would you say about that? I think that's a pretty easy,
I don't like it.
That's not too arbitrary.
No, it is. It fundamentally is arbitrary, right? You're going to have situations.
Sorry,
hold on, real quick.
Threat in a democracy, unless they're going to win under the terms.
Let me. Let me respond to this quickly.
So we'll have this.
Yeah. So I don't like this because you're saying, yes, it is this concept is being applied to AfD in Romania. It's also being applied in strange circumstances, and I guess I'm against it on two principles. For the first thing I'm against is, like, if you want to vote away certain democratic principles, I think that might be okay depending on what they are, right? Like, for example, we currently have an anti-democratic principle called the First Amendment, which is that you don't get to vote to illegalize burning flags. Like, this is an anti-democracy,
sure.
Anti-democracy. And
what about voting way of voting?
Well, hold on.
That's kind of the point.
There are absolutely we vote away voting all the time. We have rules against felons voting. We have rules against children voting.
I mean, completely voting away democracy. Like, it's like,
hold on.
Should we never be allowed to restrict it? It can only ever grow.
Well, exactly. Yeah, you can never completely vote away voting.
We raised
at some point only going to have one person voting. You're at some point going to get
okay. I'm sorry. I didn't know I had to clarify this. I mean that completely stripping every citizen away from being able to vote and just saying, here's the king, here's the Führer. He gets to do what he wants.
Sure. So Germany would be okay with like limiting voting to like 1% of the population. That wouldn't run afoul of the rule.
No, I think that would also run afoul of the rule.
Before we go,
what about 5%? Wait, hold on. You called it a hard and fast rule. What about 5%?
I think any and all things that is like restricting a huge chunk of the population, is probably going to be restricted.
What's a huge chunk?
See, when you say something like there's a reasonable case for saying felons shouldn't vote, maybe they do that there. I don't think that's going to be like you're dismantling. Yeah, we're children. That's not dismantling democracy. Versus, hey, this party is specifically running on the platform the same as the 40s to get rid of voting.
Well, hold on. What about
I'm pointing out is your artifact definition is not all that hard.
I don't know. Both of these exceptions seem pretty clearly not within the grounds of what they would do. I don't actually know the German law that well. Go ahead, Gibb.
I was gonna say, well, okay, in that case, what about like 21-year-olds being able to vote, but not 18-year-olds now? That's like, I mean, it wouldn't be a permanent one, but you just wiped out a massive amount of people.
Here's the thing. This is very clear, and I'm not a German scholar, but if you ask any of these like German legal experts about this isn't like we're fighting on the little edge cases here of like, well, what if we didn't let these people vote? Because they had in 2012 like this mandatory civil service, which you could say, they're stripping people of their rights. They're forcing them to go work in these hospitals and this hospice care. They're forcing them to go in the military. This is very different from, hey, we have deemed that this party is completely intent on destroying our government as we see it now, like completely, like everything, every institution that we have in terms of voting, first and then second, everything in terms of parliament, they're going to get rid of that completely and dismantle a government and install their own sort of like tyrannical dictatorship. It has to be pretty damn explicit. And you can look at the law on this. I don't have this in front of me. I wasn't expecting to talk about it today. The point is, they have a very strict rule about this very specific thing because of their history in the 40s. We don't have that specifically insofar as that I don't think you could draw like the exact line, exact same parallel. But I think if you showed like, hey, if you specifically tried to violate, the Electoral Count Act, maybe that maybe you should be prosecuted for that.
Okay, so we're going to go to iCal, and then we're going to go to Mr. Ryan here. Go ahead, iCal.
Yeah, so just to answer your question on the fishing expedition, I don't think that is just entirely a relative thing. It's pretty easy to identify what is a fishing expedition. If we're going to use Bill Clinton as an example, if you're going to be going after whitewater and in the process of investigating whitewater, you don't find anything, but then you find the blue dress, you can say then that, okay, if you would not, if you can use the but for rule on this, you can say, but for the prior investigation, we would never have found out about the blue dress. Then it was a fishing expedition. But then, so I don't think it's necessarily so relativistic that you can't make a determination as to whether or not something is.
Wait, hold on.
fishing
I go.
We should
However,
expand the fruit of the poisonous
Hold on.
tree.
I don't think that. I don't think that was a fish. What you described. I don't think that.
Stuff, yeah.
I don't think that was a fishing
Infinitely
expedition. Could you
expand it.
explain a
Well,
little
let's
more?
hold.
Get rid of plain view.
Because well, hold on.
No more
because
plain view
I'm
exceptions.
not going in the direction that you think I'm going, because what I'm saying is I don't care if it was a fishing expedition, right? If they found that blue dress, because as a federal officer, you have an obligation. If you find out about another crime in the course of your investigation, you are obligated to then point out that.
Yeah, but
crime.
is that first investigation proper? Is the question, right?
Yeah, and I think it was proper. I think there were
Sure.
were potentially
So, okay.
real crimes.
Then it might not be a fishing expedition. But like, let's say let's say the government had assigned like a specific officer just to follow like them around all day long and like take notes on everything they did, and then they searched the notes several times and found like a very convoluted way of charging them with something strange. That's bullshit. We can't have that.
Okay, let's go to Mr. Ryan. Go ahead, and then we're gonna go to Prime.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Just a few notes just to try to tie up some loose ends. First, I know we talked about treason briefly. Treason is an incredibly high bar. Nothing we've talked about today is even remotely close to treason. It's not even in that ballpark. We can use the term like colloquially, but legally as a actual crime, you need to essentially have declared war on the United States. You need to actually have like had an invasion. It's a very, very high bar. We can get into it if it's interesting, but none of this is treason. Second,
Can I ask? Can I ask then on that? Because I'm not familiar with this, but because it's such a high bar, would that not be like an incredibly easy, like what Prime is talking about? Like, hey, that's the hard line. If we can show that you did this, you should absolutely go to jail for this.
It's a very hard line, and I've actually made the argument that you can't even presidential immunity doesn't cover treason because treason is the only constitutional crime. It's in the Constitution as "Thou shalt not do this." So,
is that not like a perfect example? Yeah.
It's an example, but it's because it's such a high bar. It's an example that doesn't really serve any purpose because,
because it's so unlike any other crime.
Not treason. None of it was treason. It's not even close. So
if we have a case for treason, they're getting charged with 50 other things.
What about what Reagan did with Iran-Contra?
Not even close.
I mean, it was literally high treason. I mean, like legally, right? Like, unless I studied this wrong in school.
We could do another
subverting Congress to take money from the Contras to pay for the missiles was absolutely high treason. Okay. Look, did the American Dad song lie to me? I don't think it would, right?
Go ahead, finish up what you're saying, Mr. Wright. Go ahead.
To the broader point about Germany, one of the great things about this country, unlike what we're seeing in Britain and Germany and in Canada, all these parliamentary democracies, is that we actually have a robust federal structure that protects people's rights objectively through the structure without the need to subjectively disenfranchise people. So, we don't need, for example, to say that you can't eliminate the vote, because the only way you could possibly do that would be to have a constitutional amendment to that effect, which you would never get passed. So, our structure is just robust in a way the German structure is not. And I think it's better to have it a structural protection rather than a subjective determination that certain parties are no longer allowed to be political parties.
Let's go to Prime. Go ahead.
Yeah, so just quickly in terms of the German thing, I actually fall more in line with Lactoid and new friend Ryan here on that one. That I don't think maybe I just don't know enough about that particular law you're discussing. Maybe right, I'm just learning about it now. But I don't like the idea of invalidating parties for the reasons of undermining democracy. That seems very vague. It doesn't seem like a hard and fast line to me. But against Ryan, I think there are all kinds of ways you can eliminate the vote for people. I mean, we saw that in the South, the Jim Crow South. You can just do that, right? When people have the vote, all of a sudden they can't use that vote, and then that can be that way for decades. So in any case, so I've gotten a lot of experience talking to lawyers, with my friend Lactoid and previously my friend Pisco, right? And something I've noticed is that you guys have a hard time when we're having these discussions about thinking about what could be rather than what is, right? So you got to really focus on what the law as it is now. When I'm proposing to you, right, a presidential crime bill, right? Like we like list them out. Like you're saying that like we shouldn't charge presidents for all kinds of nonsense, right? And there is no hard and fast line, but we actually can do that. That's what I'm saying. Like we can write laws. We can do anything we want, right? Why not say like, yeah, whether it be embezzlement, it'd be like trying to dissolve Congress. It could be, or the Supreme Court, or like the whole list. You could just or nuking or slavery, right? Like I don't know, like trying to enslave a portion of the population, right? Would be you could just list these things out and say, like if you do these things, then you'll be prosecuted. Like we have special like crimes for people, like a federal officer. If the federal officer abuses their power or a cop abuses their powers, like crimes for that. We can have a presidential crimes. Why not do something like that?
Well, Prime, there's two problems. The first is, following the Trump immunity case, presidents themselves are essentially immune from almost everything.
He's saying for non-official acts, obviously.
For non-official acts, it's all right. You don't need it. You already have it.
No. I'm talking about official acts, or I'm talking about.
Well, then you get an amendment to the Constitution, then.
Yeah, it's because the Supreme Court has ruled.
Why do I need an amendment to the Constitution?
Because the Constitution provides immunity, like to those official acts.
The Supreme Court has ruled.
The president has been granted power that is not overseen by anyone. It's the
But
president.
I think what Prime isn't saying how it currently stands. He's saying, ought we to do this? Like
you could, but you have to pass a constitutional amendment.
You would need a constitutional amendment.
Okay. And I might be missing something here. So there was an option to. So I guess. Oh yeah. So now I'm remembering this conversation on what counts as an official act or what doesn't. Okay. Sorry. Yeah. Let me pull back. Okay. So maybe I'm using official acts in my head differently than what you guys are doing. So let's say non-official acts. Excuse me. Then right. Like would enslaving of the population, would that be an official act of the presidency?
Yes.
That would be an official act. Okay. So you're saying that
would that be an official?
I don't know about that, Ryan.
An official act is, I was being a little glib.
Slave.
But the line between official and non-official is not about how bad the conduct was. It's about the nature of the power exerted. So if the president is using the powers of his office, he's acting in his official capacity. If he's, for example, taking a bribe on a business deal, that has nothing to do with the presidency. So that's unofficial. Official versus unofficial is not about how bad the conduct is. It's about whether he's acting in his role.
But if he's personally owning a slave for his own material benefit, this would be unofficial.
Exactly. If he had a slave in his house that he was just secreting, that would be unofficial.
No. Why would it be unofficial?
I don't know.
I don't even know what official act could be like overtly against the 13th Amendment. I think there's a problem with that, Ryan.
Lactoid, part of the problem with that, ruling from the Supreme Court is like what is an official act is so ambiguous. And I think to Prime's point here, Ryan. Let me finish, and then you could say to Prime's point here, you can kind of finagle any and all of these things into, well, I'm actually doing it because it helps me with this part of my role as the president.
And that's
You can try.
That's not valid.
Right. I guess.
I think you should. Then in that case, okay. Well, then let me pull back. Then I still have some disagreements about it.
I think you guys misunderstand that the balance of powers isn't like rock, paper, scissors, where it's like judiciary over executive and then Congress over judiciary.
Two sentences. I'm done.
I'll even you can double after Prime. Go ahead. Yeah, finish out.
Yeah. 2 cents. So just that, like, one, I still have some disagreements here. Maybe just like as a retread of the discussions we had Lactoid, months ago on this thing. But I don't want to slow down the panel on that, right? We can talk about other things. But assuming you're right, assuming you guys are completely right, then yes, I would be looking for that constitutional amendment, right? That we can design the society as we want. And I think it would be best for us, right? Best for institutions if we decided that there was a list of crimes that presidents will be the president and whoever is of the powerful, right, will be prosecuted and are prosecuted. Done.
That would just hand the legislature the power of the presidency. They could just decide, here's the law, now you have to do this, and even if it's an official act, like there's a very good
right,
reason
but we could
this.
do that constitutionally, right? What's necessarily the problem with that is what Crime's asking. I don't see a necessary problem as long as I agree with the crimes that are being codified, right?
Right.
Like, for example, nuking Chicago.
This is like an amendment. This
Should
is a
that
total
be illegal?
restructuring of the executive branch.
Sure. Should we restructure the executive branch so they can no longer nuke Chicago?
That actually would be treason. That's the
Hell
rare
no.
actual treason
Well,
example.
what if it was an alien invasion?
Wait, why is that treason? Yeah.
Well, what if there's an alien invasion? Would you nuke Chicago?
You
Right. I don't think it's necessarily treason, Ryan.
Well, then
The
you're nuking the
hypothetical
aliens.
is-
They just happen to be in Chicago. If you're
Happen
nuking
to be.
Chicago because
There was a
Chicago,
member of
then you have
MS-13.
problems.
There was a member of MS-13 in Chicago, and the rest is collateral damage.
Yeah. I mean, because basically treason is, essentially like making war on the United States or its analog. So if like the president just like nuke Chicago or nuke New York, that would be the sort of thing. And this is the example I gave, by the way, why I think treason is not immunized. Because like if the president nuked Chicago and then fled to Russia and said, ha ha, I did it for Putin, now I live here, right? And then like 10 years later, we caught him and we put him on trial and we said, hey, you nuked Chicago and then you said you did it for Putin. We're definitely putting you in jail now for treason. And he said, no, presidential immunity.
Ryan, you're adding something to Ryan. You're adding the running away and admitting wrongdoing. What if Trump actually justifies it and says, this is part of my official act? He said, hey, as part of my campaign, I'm going to clean up New York. He gets elected and he fucking nukes New York and he's like, look, there's no more crime. There's no more homeless people. It's a wonderful town there. And then he just, that now it's not treason, right?
He eminent domains all New York and then just becomes
very good
glass. We're going to
Yeah,
tear off all the glass.
Yeah, I mean, to that point, what about like a disease outbreak? Like something along those lines.
Yeah,
Like
like
100
what,
million
sort of like
chickens.
containment slaughter. Yeah, bird flu.
zombie
Like, you
apocalypse.
could argue what they did with bird flu was justified. Or what did they do in like England where they killed all the ferrets? What if he had to do that with people? There could be a drastic situation. You got like a 90% death rate virus with 1 to 2 R thing where it's constantly spreading. It's like, look, if I do not shoot everyone in this city, it's going to spread. It's going to kill all of America.
Ryan?
It
That
isn't
would count as
necessarily
No hard
treason.
lines, Ryan. No hard lines. See,
But
This is why it's important to vote in a good president that's not demented.
That's very good.
I actually think that could be justified given a disease that bad. Now, obviously, COVID wasn't anywhere close, so I don't think we've ever been close. But there's a foreseeable future where I'm like, damn, that sucks, but I'm really glad that he shot everyone in New York because otherwise I'd get it in California.
I mean, soy pill's right, but we don't want to nuke zombies. Radioactive zombies bad. I'm just saying. Like,
Look,
They're not cockroaches, Gibbs. They die.
no, if you read, I guess you haven't read World War Z, the book, but the
they're
book,
already dead.
Bad shit happens after they nuke the zombies. Yeah. Anyway, going on.
That's a good one.
If we can take a step back, because I know these hypotheticals are fun and now they're kind of spiraling.
Yeah.
But it sounds like a lot of people on this panel are not fans of the immunity decision. Immunity decision, there's a direct line from the Trump prosecutions to the immunity decision. When you engage in political prosecutions, you ask questions you might not like the answers to. As a result of prosecuting Trump, we now have presidential immunity, and we are likely to find that special prosecutors are going to be illegal going forward. I don't think that's happened yet, but I think it's overwhelmingly likely to happen during the next couple of years. So, what ends up, and when I gave that, like, the president pardons himself example, the reason I brought it up is because when you engage in political prosecutions, the system develops antibodies. It develops immunity. It develops a practice of self-pardon.
Criminals find their way to do more crimes. So why have laws, right? Because criminals are going to find their ways around them. Like, whatever.
No. What I'm saying is that we have erred. Like, in a perfect world, you would do it perfectly. But if you have to make a choice and you have to make an error one way or the other, having less political prosecutions is a better course of action than having more.
We know.
That
I
is
think
my
that
argument.
the problem
we
is
don't have to do it
on that
perfectly,
front that Merrick Garland didn't move his ass and go after the actual situations that could be gone after against Trump, and instead there was a situation with New York that was, debatable whether or not it was a fishing expedition, as opposed to something that was more open and shut because he dragged his ass and didn't do anything. So that could have been the but for why we're where we're
No,
at.
He
right
ignored
now.
Congress.
we
He
don't-
ignored
What?
Congress and refused to hand over the Hur
Nonsense.
report.
It's always an awful argument when you have to argue for perfection to do anything within real life, right? Like we live in an imperfect world. We will have imperfect strives for justice, right? We have a justice system which a lot of people think like prosecutes like regular people unfairly. Right, but that doesn't mean we don't have a justice system. We're like, I guess we give up on this, right? Yeah, criminals will find a way to do more crime, and
Yeah, but it also means we ask for less enforcement.
What? I don't understand.
It also means we ask for less enforcement when it doesn't make sense. Like I think what you're trying to push us into this black and white kind of like dichotomy, where we're saying, well, you should never prosecute a politician. That's not what we're saying. What we're saying is right now we prosecute. Okay. Just to be clear, our position right now we prosecute them too much for too many dumb things. We got to reverse course a little bit and not do that so much. And when it comes to Biden, like doing this would absolutely be a fishing expedition. And it was wrong when they did it to Trump, and it'd be wrong when they do it to Biden now.
But I don't know why you keep confusing my point. I'm saying, yeah, like I can agree with you that we do that, right? But if you can imagine a valid reason to prosecute a politician, right? Whatever it is, I'll leave it up to your imagination, Lactoid. If it exists in there, then when that happens, we should actually do it. Right?
Sure, codify. Yeah, I agree with codifying it. That's why I said before. I would be okay. I would be fine.
I don't understand. We've seen it happen.
We don't have this process. Okay, I actually agree with Prime. I would like to see a constitutional amendment that does outline, as long as I agree with the crimes. Of course, I wouldn't want them criminalizing dumb shit. But if it's very specific crimes that I think make sense, yeah, I'd be fine with that. It makes sense.
Let's look at something else here that I want to talk about.
Like nuking Chicago.
Yeah, nuking Chicago. No, in the last 3 minutes, I want to talk about something else that's interesting. So they've also pushed not for just for criminal charges, but they pushed for like invalidating executive orders. You know, they're saying validate the pardons. Do you think there's any more legality like to this? Is there any more? I don't know. Weight to this? More? Does it hold more water? Like, what do we think here?
Well, should we charge? Let's say we get evidence, and just because people on the panel may disagree with this, but let's say evidence comes out that some things were signed with this auto pen that Biden had just no awareness of, right? Which would make them invalid. Should there be prosecutions for the people who did that? Should we say, hey, you were the chief of staff using this auto pen, and that you were not entitled to do that?
Then
let me ask a clarifying question.
Like, I don't know how they would prove.
Did Biden just say, "Oh, sign all that," and actually give them the directive to? Or did they just like hide it from Biden and sign it without?
I'm saying in the hypothetical where things were signed and Biden was either told afterwards, so maybe they have some meeting and they told him after it was signed, which would be invalid, or just in some way that we can determine and say, look, this wasn't signed with the consent of the president. The auto pen was used. This is clearly fraud. What do we do if that happened?
Yeah, go after the people who did it.
I know we can say, oh, it didn't happen or like whatever, but let's just say that somebody used the auto pen without the president's consent.
Get the staffers, yeah.
Yeah, I might not even necessarily say that this would go to, I don't know if you're going to call me a hypocrite for this, but like in the same way that like Kilmar Abrego Garcia, I don't think anyone should be criminally charged for the dereliction of due process or whatever. I think this is hey, you should acknowledge you fucked up, which they did, but then correct this mistake and make sure it never happens again. In the same way, hey, you are subverting the idea of what the president's power is supposed to be by signing, vetoing this bill or signing this pardon, which he didn't do. Now, if he comes out and makes a big fucking stink about it and is like, hey, what the fuck? Like my staffers are literally going against my will. I think that might be a different thing. But when it's like, hey, like Biden was going to do this anyway, so we just fucking signed it. And we're like, hey, we signed this for you. And he's like, where am I? Like, whatever. Like, I don't think that's that big a deal. It shouldn't happen.
Well, that would make it
where am I? And it's all good.
That would make the signature literally forged, and that would be
literally.
That would open the door to whether we invalidate these pardons or not. Like, let's just say
we obviously don't know. I'm not going to say I have the evidence. I'm not going to be convinced. We're not going to convince each other. I'm just saying, like, with the rationalization that afterwards he is saying, oh, okay, like that was what I was going to do. Now, if he's so incoherent that it's like Jimmy Carter voting in the 2024 where they wheel out the corpse and they like press his hand against the fucking vote, and it's like, oh, you did it, Mr. Carter, and he's like just a vegetable. It's like, all right, like why do we even have
the reason I say he finds out after is because it doesn't matter if he consents after the signature is written. The signature cannot be used without his prior consent. It's not like you can go tell the president.
But I'm saying there's some sort of precedent,
and just hope he says it's okay.
If there's a precedent of this consent of like, yeah, you guys, sometimes you're my board, I trust you, everything goes through me, but sometimes I let you sign things. That's very different from, hey, I'm just sitting here in the office, like, staring at a wall and someone's wiping up drool, and then they bring me all the documents and press my hand against them. I think
but a written EO is different, right?
Yeah, for example, what if it's different? What if it's like, hey, like we have an initiative, right, that we're working for, right? Like, for Trump, it would be like strengthening immigration laws, right, to a fascist extent, of course. But like this is what we're working on, and this is my team that's working on it with me, right? Stephen Miller, you're my guy, right? If anything comes in, right, on this topic, go ahead, and do it. But he doesn't know about it. Like Trump doesn't know.
I mean, the auto pen has to reflect the same level of consent as his actual signature, right? So, like, we open the door to like material misrepresentation to the president, right? If he was misrepresented what he was signing, there's an issue there. But I guess the point to what you're asking is, hang on. So I'm trying to understand exactly what you're asking.
Yeah.
But you're saying if, like, let's say he had a generic idea, and they were like, here's the bill for what you asked, right? I would still argue that he needs to understand in the same way he would when he was actually signing it. And you know what? You probably could say, look, if the president signed it and he didn't really pay attention, that's still valid because he's there and in person and signing it. But I would argue that when you don't have that wet ink signature and it's auto-penned and he's maybe not there, the auto pen signature is not indicative of that consent the same way that his wet ink signature would be. So it opens the door to like, how much did he know? Did he directly like prescribe this? Because I would to respond to your question, if he gave a generic instruction and then they responded and used the auto pen on something specific, I think that's an issue. I think that the auto pen needs to reflect the same level of understanding and consent of the president as a wet ink signature would be. So when you run into issues where he doesn't have like a full clear understanding or it comes after the fact,
I'm trying not to whataboutism, but like Pentuple, do you think like Trump could explain like every signed pardon for like the January 6th stuff? Like, I probably not. Like, like it's one of those like, yes, he acknowledges the greater idea of it, but like if you asked him what crime specifically did you pardon for this guy, like he's not going to know. And I don't even think he specifically signed those. Those were an auto.
But he would have to understand what the scope of it was. He wouldn't be able to say, I don't know what even the scope was. We just like, what did I sign? There were pardons or whatever. Like there has to be like, I can agree with you. It's not like you have to have this whole bill memorized word to word. But the point is, you have to have the consent of the president to use the auto pen. It's supposed to reflect the same exact thing as a wet ink signature. But when you have the wet ink signature, that consent is inherent. Like you don't need to question the wet ink signature because you know that he's consenting to it.
I've got a great allegory.
Hold on. Let's go to Mr. Ryan.
You remove that guarantee of consent.
Treat it like a terms of service, right? You don't have to read the whole thing, but like if somebody else clicks on the box for you, you never agreed to it.
Oh, let's go to Mr. Ryan. Go ahead.
I don't want to be the splash of cold water because the hypos are fun, but this will never happen. And the reason it will never happen is the only way to prove that Biden didn't have awareness of what was signed would be to get information that is protected by executive privilege. And Trump, as president, will not want to weaken executive privilege because he's going to want to assert it later. So, the answer is, you can do whatever you want. You can call on whoever you want. They're going to say executive privilege. And it's actually a very good case of executive privilege. Like, what did you say to the president when you were deciding whether or not to sign an executive order or a pardon?
Well, couldn't you just ask whether you were directed to use it? Can you say whether, like, if I ask, were you directed to use the auto pen for this order? Is that violating executive privilege? It might be. I'm not an expert on this, but they would. Is it any like the scope of executive privilege would cover just not even what the communications are, but just that you had a valid this is a legal requirement to use the auto pen. So I would.
If you get into yes or no questions, you can sometimes try to get around privilege questions. But I mean, I would expect that if they actually pursued this, there would be very broad assertions of executive privilege, and I suspect that when those happens, the Trump administration will not fight them because they will not want to weaken executive privilege because he's going to want to. It's just one of those things. Like no president's going to. We should pierce executive privilege. It's kind of a self-defeating.
Let me ask you this then. Let me just play crazy guy here. Let's say he knows that.
As per a difference from the norm, Admiral.
I know. Let me just play Alex Jones since I got my Alex Jones beard going here today for a second. What if, hypothetically, Mr. Ryan, he came and was like, well, I want to strengthen executive privilege. So by doing so, we're going to go after some bullshit with Biden, knowing that this is going to come up. That way I can use this later. Do you think that's a viable tactic they could use?
I mean, I think that they actually might do that. Like the way that would play out is that you have not like a court proceeding. You have a hearing at the House or at the Senate, like they're going to do, like they're calling up people to testify about Biden's health. And you start asking them, like, well, did you know that the president had mental capacity issues? When did you know? Did you sign this document for him? Was that after you knew? And at some point, they're going to say executive privilege. And then Gibbs, to your point, if what Trump wants to do strategically is broaden executive privilege, they could then say, "Oh yeah, okay, executive privilege. I guess we can't ask any more questions," and like set a precedent that way. So that would be like a 4D chess move if he has lawyers who are really thinking this stuff through.
That doesn't sound like something Trump would do at all, does it? I don't know. Interesting. I think it sounds like something he might try to do. Ital, let's go to you. You had something you were wanting to bring up a little bit ago.
Yeah, well, I was going to say something else, but as long as we're on this subject, yeah, actually, this is the
You
reason
do both.
why I'm for the same reason, but just kind of using it in a different way, I guess. I'm for all of these things, right? Because I want all of these things to be president. And I don't give a shit about Biden. So if he has to be held responsible for decisions that were made under his presidency, and that allows us to hold presidents in general accountable for these things, I count that as a win.
You mean Trump?
So I say well, no. I'm saying because we're holding Biden accountable, then we can use this for everyone. And I think that's a good thing. But I did want to say that, just back to the topic in terms of like about presidents who are like in that particular age group. I just looked at all of the oldest presidents we've ever had. The oldest is Trump, at least in terms of like he came in as the oldest president to ever like have an inauguration day, right? Then Biden, then Trump again, then Reagan, who had his own dementia issues, and then Eisenhower, who was 70, who himself had a stroke that there was a big cover-up scandal of. Every president who's been in his 70s has had issues like this. And so I don't think it's just a question about let's do this with Biden and not consider it to be a precedent for any other president, like they did with Bush v. Gore, where they said, "Oh, this is not a precedent." Turned out not to be true. It was treated as precedent almost immediately afterwards. Same thing here. Let's do it. Let's have not just prosecute for all of the things that Gibbs is suggesting that we would prosecute over, but also like mandatory evaluations by somebody who reports to the American people, not to the executive branch, and specific like stair-step consequences as to if this happens, then this is the response. And if we were to do all of those things, I'm more than willing to apply that to Biden in cases like this as well. Yeah, sure.
Make him draw the elephant.
This is the other reason why I'm not even. This is actually something that's earlier. I wanted to address it. The other concern I have is like, I'm sorry, but like if the people want to elect a dummy, I mean there's something fundamentally democratic about that, right? So let's say you do have somebody who's like doesn't know where they are and they're shuffling all over the place, and the American people look at that, they look at that person, they say, yes, we want that, we want whatever that is, and no coherent sentence, no nothing. We love it, right? Who are you to say, no, you got to pick this younger guy?
I mean, what if they wanted to elect like a child? Like, I mean,
you have to be 35.
I'm somewhat okay with removing that requirement, but that's at least like hard coded. If we're talking about something like in the law, but if we're talking about something like mental acuity, I guess you could hard code that using some kind of measure.
It kind of is.
Yeah, but I don't even like the age requirement.
Please make a rule so we don't do this to ourselves again, please.
I don't even like the age requirement. I'd be okay with people electing like a 25-year-old.
Please don't let me do this. You need to make a rule so I won't do this to myself on purpose.
You have to step down.
Well, y'all are doing it to yourself right now.
To be an age requirement. It just
Dude,
has
the
to be.
Trump deal is goofy.
There's nothing in the Constitution that says a dog can't be president.
True.
Yeah, let me boil down into one single word.
Yes, citizen.
I was in the foothills of the Himalayas.
Yeah, but that's yeah.
I mean, what
look, political problems need political solutions. Like in terms of like the age of our, our ruling class. I mean, the Democrats just lost on Trump's bill in large part because 3 of their members
yeah.
So like at a certain point, hopefully the voters wake up and say, We need to elect younger people. Like, it's not good to have Mitch McConnell glitching on the floor of Congress. It's not good that when Dianne Feinstein died, the first thing that came out of my mouth was, do you think this is going to affect her reelection chances? Because it's like, it's fucking crazy. Like, we know that these people are not compos mentis. Like, it's, anyone who has an older family member has seen this. You know what it is, but people are still voting for them. But it turns out there's a price to pay for that. And hopefully the solution is that people wake the fuck up and start voting for better candidates. Like, this is...
I agree.
Ryan, isn't it sad that
I want the worst candidate?
I was just gonna say, isn't it sad that former and alive Senator Barbara Boxer is like a rare statement,
Yeah, I mean, but back to it. I think the ultimate check has to be the people, and like, look, if the people want to burn down the country, well, then fine, right? Like, if the people want to incinerate it, then I guess it's up to their choice. But that should be the ultimate choice, and I think that like it's basically the whole point of democracy, at least part of the point of democracy, is to be able to like crowdsource wisdom, right? Which it gets varying results with that, but you can crowdsource wisdom.
I have some concerns, yeah.
Yeah, same here. But yeah, so like in that case, right? Like what will in that situation will most likely be the case is that this shuffling idiot has been dressed up by a PR team to look competent to the people, right? That all the things that they're doing, right? That an objective third-party observer might say, hey, that's signs that this person isn't competent, right? Could be also dressed up as, well, I mean, he's eccentric, right? And I think we're seeing this on both sides. Like,
I have a solution.
Agree with me?
Well, I can vote for someone wait, retarded, right? I'm allowed to do that.
You're allowed to do that, but here's a solution.
I know that very well.
Instead of restricting who can run, you restrict who can vote. And so only smart people vote, and then they will only vote for good candidates.
Well, yeah,
right?
Bottom up. And then we elect Skynet.
What's wrong with that?
Yeah, the real problem is the voters.
The real problem is the voters who elected the guy. That's the real problem.
Then we're just going to elect Skynet. That's what's fixing to happen.
College-educated people disproportionately voted for Joe Biden, actually. So I don't know.
That's why we base it off IQ and not college degrees.
Yeah, I wouldn't agree to college.
I have some bad news about IQ stats between the parties.
I got a couple studies, too.
Ooh.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean,
I just
IQ fight.
The thing about like any of these like barriers where you say like, well, you can't run unless you do X, you can't, all these different things. You can come up with a system that sounds as objective as you want, but you inevitably run into like an analog to the free speech problem, which is it's not about what the standard is; it's about who decides whether the standard has been met.
What about an age cap? Like, why don't we?
You have to vote for your party. Just don't vote for your party if their candidate they gave you was a demented retard. You didn't have to do this yourself.
That's a good point.
You don't need to make a rule so you stop shooting yourself in the foot.
But in a two-party system, we kind of do, right?
And also, couple, to be fair,
we really don't. I really don't think that we need rules to change. We literally
that's right. Biden did get voted for. He dropped out
because your party told you to. Like, at least I get to vote for the candidate I want to vote for. At least I get that. You guys don't. You guys are just like, we hate Trump so much. Tell me who you gave us. It's like, no shit. You guys aren't going to win an election. What the fuck did you expect?
I mean,
like, we got our candidate and you got handed one.
Biden and he dropped out. What are you supposed to do then?
Give us rules so that the party can't hand us.
No, here's the thing. Stop.
If we made a rule, the party wouldn't be even able to force that candidate.
Oh, Lordy Lou.
Just don't vote for a candidate that's a retard. You guys literally did that on purpose because you hate Trump. This is your fault.
Well, maybe
you guys could just
maybe other things are more important. Maybe having an executive branch where cabinet members and other advisors and other individuals agree with me.
We're honest about his condition. Kamala should have 25th them for sure.
They should have. Here's my thing about the rules and stuff. It's not so people don't do this to themselves. It's another thing because I'm thinking about how, especially with local or even like national elections, like in the House, for example, a lot of these old people do get the force of the party behind them because they're a safer bet and they don't want to gamble with money on younger individuals. So the only reason that they would take the risky choice and put their money behind somebody, excuse me.
The premise is that you have to vote for the candidate your party gives you. That's your that's what I'm calling out here.
No.
This is your fault.
Right, but I'm
you guys could just not vote for the candidate that you don't like.
That's great. I'm talking about something different.
Voting works though. But that's not how like the system actually works.
No, that is
So
how it
we have-
works. That's not how
No, no.
you guys work. That's not how
No,
you guys work.
Wait, you would vote
First
for
of
a
all-
Democrat if
first of
the
all,
Republicans
yeah,
sucked? Really?
Like, we like Temple, you can
I have voted
Yeah.
for
Temple,
Democrat
stop
several
throwing
times.
that
Yeah,
at
I
us.
vote for
Republican.
candidates I
Stop.
like.
This
You
is
guys
my
have
first
to
Trump
vote
vote.
for candidates
Temple,
you don't
stop
like.
throwing that at us because we will just say that Trump is retarded, right? We can just say the same thing.
No,
back
but I
and forth.
wanted that
And then you're
candidate
gonna
that way. It's
disagree,
not about whether
and
he's
then
you
retarded.
want
I got
to
to
know
vote for the guy I
disagree.
chose.
Hold
You
on,
guys
you're
are
gonna hard disagree.
operating
Let me
on
just say
this
one thing.
premise
Let me just-
that you need to
Let me
hold
just
your
say one
party
thing.
to stop them from giving you candidates.
Again.
Hold
Calm
on.
down.
No, candidates.
This,
Hold on. All right. Yeah. So
you guys, your party is not going to recover
Hold on,
from this
hold
until
on,
you guys
hold
actually
on,
address
hold on.
what you
Hold on,
guys
stop,
did without.
stop.
I couldn't say what I was
Stop.
going to say. Can I finish?
The people that left you guys,
Yes,
the
yes,
party,
what's
maybe
that?
I'm
That's
speaking for
awesome.
maybe I'm not,
Hold
but
on,
I don't
hold
think
on.
you guys are going to give a
Get him,
convincing
Pinto.
answer to this until you can do it without butt Trump. Like
Okay,
you
okay.
guys voted
Right,
for
so
a
I
guy
was
that your
making-
party scammed you into
Well,
and handed to you. That's the problem. You don't need a
So-
rule to
Okay,
stop
hold on.
yourself.
Right, so I was
from
making
Alright,
this
let-
man
let
argument
Katya
that had
finish.
nothing to do with Trump, and we
Hold on,
interrupted
Hold on.
me.
Hold
Can
on.
I finish?
Katya, finish, and then I'm going to say something after that. Then we can go. Go ahead.
Okay, so
will have Kamala
what I
and you
was
like it.
saying is, candidates having the funding to run for election, if they aren't independently wealthy, they're getting the money from the party, and the party
So
is
don't
in
vote
certain
for
ways
them.
choosing.
Hold on. Do this
Hold
to
on. Let her
you.
finish.
You're literally proving my fucking point.
That's
You're
what
like,
a political
the
party
party
is.
handed us
No,
the candidate.
You're
What am I
literally
supposed to do?
arguing against
What am I
concept of
do
political
when the party
parties and
hands us
having them
that
at all.
candidate? I have no choice
Okay,
but to vote for
so
the handed
wait a minute.
candidate.
So
That's my
where do you
point.
think that the funding to
You're
run for
making my
election
point.
should come from if you're against parties in general now, I guess? Because or what do you think there should be a
Parties suck, for sure.
there should be a pre-primary before the primary to decide who the
No, you
party
should
is
actually
going
let
to
your
go
party should have
forward
let
with?
you have a primary. That is the problem here. You guys
So-
got
okay,
because
alright,
they didn't let you have a primary, and you still chose to
Hold
vote.
on.
You're kind of acknowledging your primary. Oligopoly, right?
Totally
Hold on.
from
This
All
is the whole scandal. They
Hold on,
skipped
stop.
the primary to
Okay,
keep Joe
okay.
around, had him drop
So
out
I
of the
wasn't-
perfect
Hold
time
on,
that the
hold
same
on.
administration.
All right,
just
all right,
they're
hold on.
only
Let me
doing
finish.
the
Pause.
primary.
Everybody
Oh,
stop.
oops.
Everybody stop. All right, 1 second.
Didn't we have a primary,
Well, hold on.
Gibbs?
Yeah, hold on. 1 second. Well, there was a primary, but
Not really.
that's the whole thing.
No,
But-
I mean, I know because he was
I'm
into
saying
it.
the
But
party
hold on.
totally.
Hold on. There is something to be said for what Pintemple say though. At least like at a local level, right? Like y'all. Someone said incredulously. I don't know who it was because there was a lot of yelling there. But I heard one of the people on the left say, "Oh, you would vote for a Democrat over a Republican," and I have voted for many Democrats in my life. Wow, surprise! Over many Republicans at a local level because I'm like, fuck that guy. I don't like his family. They're some douchebags. Or fuck these people. I don't like what they said. Or fuck George P. Bush. This motherfucker wants to move the Alamo. I'll vote for fucking Satan over whoever wants to move for the Alamo. Like, I don't give a shit. Like, we're not going to vote for that guy, right? There's plenty of examples. So, like, yeah, you could definitely get rid of people like in your party if you vote against them, like just by like, or even in the primary, like you don't have to go with the establishment candidate. Well, like a lot of times, how the
That's how Trump
a little
won.
bit
He did
older.
When
not
I
do
said that,
establishment.
But hold
when I
on.
said that incredulously, I meant it for presidential election specifically.
That's fine.
Trump beat the establishment.
Yeah, Trump did beat the establishment because I mean that's exactly the
Well,
point.
that's
Like
not
the establishment would have been
against what I
Jeb Bush,
said.
Rick Perry, so one of these guys, like like
Yeah, Marco Rubio.
Yeah, but then he
they were-
installed
I
all
was
the
talking
Goldman
about
Sachs
the-
people
we're gonna
to
go to
his
Prime.
cabinet and totally did the
Let's go to
establishment
Prime.
stuff,
Let's go to
so-
Prime here. He was trying to get in. Go ahead.
Not this time around.
Okay.
Sure.
There's a lot here.
Unfortunately.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm going to try to go through this quickly. I think Kacho was making a reasonable point, which was saying that like the party leaders are going to throw their support behind a person that they think is a better bet, right? They'll put weight and they put funding behind them. I think that's only her point, right? And then that person will have an advantage within a primary system. Now, to Pentemple's point, right? Pentemple's saying, well, you don't have to vote for them. And I agree, because I didn't vote for him. So I didn't vote for Kamala, right? And I wouldn't have voted for Joe Biden because they didn't earn my vote, right? And I've made this point again and again. Fuck them, you aren't for my vote. Yeah, so like
I think
I
you have
hear
to-
you there, right?
Hey, what
But I
state
think
do you live in,
within
Prime?
the party, which is why I'm
But
trying to
that's-
get involved with the Florida Democratic Party because
Please be
I think they're
Pennsylvania.
fucking up so
But
badly.
that's
Yeah, wait. No, wait. Prime, what state are you in?
don't. I'm sorry, I don't talk about my.
Don't worry about it.
Oh, I gotta know.
Michigan.
I told you you
He
didn't
was in
vote for him.
Michigan.
I
He
will
was in Michigan.
absolutely-
Swear to God, if you live
It
in
was
Pennsylvania,
Prime's direct fault, the election with Trump.
You did this.
He lives in all 7 swing states.
Anyway, keep going. Keep going.
All 7 states.
Yeah,
Yes. That's my answer. I'm going to use that in the future, actually. But yeah. So we should. Fuck. Sorry. I'm trying to.
No, I should say sorry. I totally derailed you.
No worries, man. No worries, man. So yeah, I didn't vote for Kamala because they have to earn my vote, right? And I think that should be the standard. To Pentaple's point, they should actually earn your vote, but that doesn't mean, in practical standards, that they won't win the primary, because that is a choice that people like when presented to most people, right? Especially most non-political people who just end up voting any which way. They're going to vote for the person who had the most funding, who has the most name recognition, who gets pushed by the party, right? And that's just an unfortunate reality of the process of
it's not true in my party.
But no, hold on. Okay, now I want to address that. Okay, that last thing you guys talked about. You talked about how Trump skipped the line, right? He did do that, but the situation is different in the Republican Party, and I mean that structurally. So what happened, right? A big difference between the DNC and the RNC is that the super delegates. Yes, there's that. But I was going to talk about that. But that's another good example. But beyond the super delegates, right? It's funding. So, outside of the RNC, a parallel funding structure was created, right? The Koch brothers, from my understanding, they were the ones who started this, but it's not just limited to the Koch brothers. They started a network, an independent funding network, and they started funding candidates to run against the RNC. Like you were a Republican candidate, but you were a Koch brother candidate, right? You were putting out their ideals. They created an independent way for candidates to jump in, to find more funding without having to bend to the party's establishment. There is no parallel to that on the Democratic side. There is none, right? And because they don't have that, it's so much harder to do. Bernie tried it, right? Bernie tried it, and he couldn't. He didn't beat the party machine because the only independent money he could get is from the voters, right? But along with that funding that you have in the RNC, you have access to institutional help, right? Because that's what they build. They build institutional structures, not just with the money. So that is different. It is structurally different on both sides. The DNC, maybe to your point, should replicate that, right? Or the Democratic Party or the left should replicate that independent structure, but we do not have it.
Wait,
currently.
we should have shadow billionaires funding elections. We should do it.
So we shouldn't. So hold on, let me.
I don't think the Koch brothers.
We should have it. I'm saying we should have an independent structure, so we're not tied to the party or having a third party, whatever it happens to be.
Well, this also affects the sitting
I like a third party. I like a third party.
To your point, Prime, there was that video of AOC and that conversation with Pelosi about some bill, and I don't remember what year it was, but she was clearly upset because she didn't want to vote a certain way on the bill, but they were clearly if you don't vote for this bill, we're not going to fund you in your next House race or whatever. This is not just about getting into Congress, but this is how they keep them in line in Congress. So that also probably needs to.
Soy, do you also agree with the third party? The third party idea? Do you like the third party idea, Soy Phil?
Concept of a third party, to distinguish ourselves from them. Only insofar as if you could somehow get enough, weight behind it to be even remotely close to subverting democratic politicians, but I don't think it's anywhere close to that. So no.
What about you, Mr. Ryan?
Well, the party has to die, and then you guys will be reborn.
If you look back,
this is what will happen to you. I have visions given to me in dreams.
Papers or different founding documents. One of the things that our founders talked about endlessly was the risk of faction capture. The idea that if you have political parties, that they're just going to start being this self-serving beast that just builds and builds and consolidates power until it no longer represents the people. And that is exactly what happened to the Democratic Party. And when people didn't want to vote for Harris, a lot of them, they saw it as you had Biden, who clearly was a president by committee, and now they're going to anoint Harris without a primary, and they're nakedly running as the party of faction capture. And this is the problem with it. It consolidates power in a way that really does jeopardize the integrity of the system. And I totally agree with you, Prime. I think that the Democratic Party needs a reckoning because for whatever the basis was, and I think you gave a good accounting of it, Trump was able to break through the logjam on the Republican side, which gave him authenticity and credibility. And on the left, no one's been able to do that. And until someone does, they're going to come across as the party of bureaucratic gatekeepers, because they are the party of bureaucratic gatekeepers. And no one wants to vote for that. It's just kind of an unpopular nightmare.
You could saw this happen with, even though I completely disagree with him on like his most biggest issue, but David Hogg being the vice chair, them trying to force him out because he was like, hey, we need to get the old folks home out of here. They're like, okay, then you gotta go, bro. I was like, are you fucking kidding? Even though I really super disagree with him as a big Second Amendment person, I'm like, okay, but you can't just like say somebody wants to change it, so they gotta get out the door.
I thought
like,
it's because he was a white guy. Am I wrong?
That was the justification, because there wasn't like, you can't just say
justification.
we disagree with you, but they're like, technically by electing you, we have violated our gender enforcement rules, and you're not a woman, so get out of here.
I
That was
just
the
point out
fishing
why David
expedition.
Hogg, if you're listening, transition
noticed
today
he
and
was a
stay
white guy
in the
when he
race.
turned against the
I just want to point out the fact that like, oh shit, we got to find some reason to get rid of him, and the reason they were able to find is he's a man is crazy. That's a crazy
Right.
rule.
That's bad. It's real bad.
Because
Yeah,
normally that's the reason that you hide, right? Normally it's like we can find some other reason, right? Like the actual reason is because he's a man. But no, the fact that he was a man was the overt reason, covering for something else.
Hey,
That's
is
crazy.
that even proven?
That's kind of
Well,
funny.
That I think they've come out and said as much. Like there's some back post hoc rationalization of there is a hiring process by which we go through that we did not follow, and because we did not follow this, now we can eject this guy, even though the real reason is we don't agree with the way that he's trying to push out these candidates. So
Literally has to transition, he'd be fine.
Well,
yes.
Based.
Yes.
Based. Anyways, but like,
let's
Not even president.
I would love
Yeah.
to see the DNC try to grapple with that. Good luck.
well, on that note,
it's
let's,
really
Chuck Berry right now.
discouraging,
This is the
and
funniest
I
shit I've ever
really think that it's something that has to be changed by like more younger people than just David Hogg and like some other people getting involved. But the problem is like the way that they're behaving has caused a lot of people to embrace anti-electoralism, which only kind of adds to the issue. Because again, like, if the old folks are the only ones who are voting, then they're going to vote for, those who are in their interest, those who are the establishment people, those who they're like, oh, I remember when that guy was elected 500,000 years ago. And it's unfortunate because I'm like, damn, you know what? It sucks. If I ever wanted to get involved in politics, I have two routes. Number one, wait 70 years. Or number two, I guess, like turn MAGA and like get caught on camera doing sexual acts at a public theater. Like those are my two options.
Wait, you think that they're old because like you don't
She was
think
already
that
elected when that happened.
Wait, you think presidents are
True.
old
You're right.
because they happen to be old? It doesn't have to do with the fact that you have to actually like build up a
Politics.
legacy to get to that point where you can run for president. You just think it's because he's
Also,
70.
they waited.
We
Why
had
shouldn't you?
Younger
It's like
people.
boiling everything down to like the surface level. It just doesn't make any sense. Why would you do
We
that?
had younger presidents in the past, though.
Well,
You can't deny that, like, these aren't literally the two oldest ones, Trump and Biden. We talked about this earlier.
Right.
on
what
that
you're
note,
saying is that they were elected and people liked them because they're old. That's obviously not
No,
the case.
they liked them
the fact that
because
they're
they
old
were
is what allows them to
established
build a larger
and safe.
resume. Does a 70-year-old have a larger resume than a 40-year-old, generally speaking?
Yeah, but there's a point where they can't do the job, as we're talking about.
Right, and that's on you to judge, isn't it? You guys aren't very good judges of that.
Perfect. All right,
apparently.
perfect.
Yeah,
Hold
but
on,
once
You
stop.
you
guys
get
want all the
past the
credibility to tell
primary-
us how Trump is.
Everybody,
you want to tell us how Trump
everybody.
is, but you guys clearly have no
I was
fucking
just
ability to judge
critiquing,
this.
right? I was just critiquing the other issues that
Goose,
are
Rabba,
internal party funding
goose.
issues 2 minutes ago, but you forgot about that. Now you're going to try to.
Children. All right.
No,
perfect.
you guys are like beyond cooked. You guys don't ever realize your party is dead. Your party is already dead.
Yes, I agree. Put double the dead.
Okay, so what do you want me to
Let's-
do, bro? Shut the fuck up. Seriously.
Vote for the other party. That's what
God
we want you
damn
to
it!
do.
All right, we're gonna go in a circle here. Who else? Who else wants to say something? Anybody? All right, thank you. All right, let me just mute everybody. Calm down. We're gonna go to closings here. We're gonna let people outros. We're gonna go and do things. I do want to say one thing. I pity the rest of the panel here and worrying about y'all's third parties because third parties are bad because. Guess what? In Texas, the only third party I would have considered was maybe a Texas nationalist landed one. But in Texas, the official stance of the Texas Republican Party is that we should be our own nation again. So, I don't have to vote third party. It's fantastic. Let's move on over to the closings here. Tell everybody what you do, where you're at, and what's your final thoughts are. We'll start with Mr. Ryan here. Go ahead.
Hey, thanks, Gibbs. Yeah, I'm Ryan. I talk about politics, law, philosophy on X. Ryan C. Mullally. My last name's unspellable, so it's a brand risk. So good luck with that. Admiral Gibbs, in his infinite wisdom, we talked about all these problems today. He actually found the solution, and it's the one that I talk about a lot, which is the root cause of our problems is that the federal government is too big and too important. If you make the federal government smaller, then these powers that are no longer with the federal government get pushed down to the states and the cities. And the good thing about that is that you know who these people are. They are closer to you. They have skin in the game. They're from your community. And as a result, you are more likely to, as Gibbs did, vote against party lines to find the person that works. When you nationalize every single little fucking thing, you end up having to make a binary left-right choice about a whole slate of every issue in the universe because everything's a federal issue, and there's no way that's a good choice. We have given the federal government too much power, and until we fix that problem, we are going to keep having these conversations about band-aid solutions, but nothing will work. The only way to solve this is to go back to our federal principles and have a limited federal government and robust plenary state governments. And that is the only solution.
All right. Thank you so much. Cal.
So there's a game we play in class called Syllogize That Enthymeme. And what that means is if you would take an argument that it would normally be a syllogism, but you take one of the premises away, such that you're only saying one premise and then you say the conclusion without saying what the other premise is, it creates problems because nobody knows fully what the argument that you're making. And what that forces you to do is generalize your principles. So you can frame something with regards to, okay, as it applies to this one president, we should do X. Or you can frame it, every time this issue comes up, regardless of the context, we should do Y. And those in that instance, the very idea of precedent is what makes this such an important issue, which is why, regardless of whether you think Biden or members of the Biden administration would end up in jail over something like this, one way to find out is to take it to court. Just take it to court and see what happens. And then whatever happens, you have a precedent that's then applicable to other administrations too. So I say, go ahead and test this stuff up. See what happens in courts if we give it a shot. So yeah, I think we should, going back to answering what the panel is supposed to answer, I would say, yeah, let's do it. Let's bring them up on charges, on whatever charges they reasonably think they can win. Prosecutors tend not to charge on things they can't win because they don't like to lose. But if they do think they can win, I think they should do it.
All right. Thank you so much. Pentable.
I'll do a short one just because my opening was really long and annoying, so I'll do a short one. But I think the cover-up of Biden's physical and mental health is one of the biggest scandals of the decade. And it still hasn't reached its apex. I think Democrats won't recover until they can acknowledge and address what they did without mentioning Trump.
All right. Prime.
Excuse me, sorry. First of all, thank you for having me. Shout out to my friend Gibbs for bringing me along, and shout out to everyone here. Right, Ryan, I believe this is the first time meeting you. I'm not so sure anymore. But if it is, then nice
you remember me, right, Prime?
I do. It was so special.
We've been on
Under the
together,
moonlight.
brother. Don't forget about me.
We met under the moonlight, right? And we had that moment, and I've never forgotten it. But sorry, Phil, thank you for it was nice meeting you again. But I think I actually wish that my friend Pentuple was right with his last quote. All right, the last thing he said, being that the Democrats won't recover unless they address this. I think the sad fact is that, yeah, they will. I think political parties have that institutional power, that traction within our society, that institutional inertia, that they can actually keep going without addressing these structural issues. And they just kind of just trudge along, right? And they can find success even without addressing core rotten problems. I think that's how we got here in the first place. I think we don't get to a Biden without a whole bunch of other problems that have never been addressed. But still, here we are, right? So I think that we should address the situation, right? I want people to be named and shamed. I want Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer, the entire leadership, all the his administration who knew, his cabinet members who fucking knew, right? I want all of them to be dragged in front of the public, if not prosecuted, at least shamed for what they did to us. But I think that's not going to happen, unfortunately. And I think that we'll get to the next election. It'll be 4 years later. Memories will fade. And we'll just do another election, right? And we'll just muddle along until our democracy kind of fucking implodes. So that, yeah, sorry, it's awful.
All right, imploding democracy. Lactoid, follow that.
Yeah, I'm Lactoid. You can find me at Lactoid TV on Twitch, Twitter, and YouTube. I agree with a lot of what's been said thus far. I agree with everything Ryan said. Most of what you said, Aiko. The one disagreement that I do have is I think courts really should be this sort of second to last resort that we use. I think American society is too litigious as it is right now. I think lawyers, by and large, make the world a worse place, and we're just awful people. So there should be fewer of us doing the shit that we do, and I think that'd lead to a better world. Now, specifically with Biden's health stuff, some of you may not know this, but I did, back when her report dropped, I did do a debate with a bunch of people, big Dem streamers. Hutch was one of them, and some other people. And
that was with Tyler, right?
Yeah, Tyler as well.
Yeah.
Yep, Tyler as well. Now I'm going to take credit for this. I'm the only one who actually read her report going into that debate. And but what I noticed is that despite the only person having read that report, admittedly, like they admitted they didn't read it, they were very vehemently fighting me on every single statement that was contained within her report. They said it was being exaggerated. I asked how. They had no answer. I was saying, what about this specific statement? Do you have any response? They had no response. But there was always a response. There was always, look at Trump. Look at Trump. He can't talk. He can't do this. Look at him. Look at him. Look at him. Look at him. This is the game plan. And this will always be the game plan in partisan politics, unfortunately. When the reality is, her report was, I think, the real notice to the Democrats that this was the time that they needed to get their act together and actually have a primary. This was it. When you have Robert Hur saying this, when you have to hide the audio recording from Congress because it's so bad that when it does get leaked, you realize, holy shit, how little did he have it together? But they heard this at the time. And it was out, and they still pushed him through. They still backed him. They still denied the party the opportunity to perhaps get somebody else. I think this, like, when you look at it that way, you realize how fundamentally rotten and dishonest the core of this party is. It is, they will lie to you to get whatever they want if it involves their own power, and it's fucked.
All right. Okay, good. All right, let's go to Katya.
I've said, like, in general, that, like, I've said this for a while, that the Democratic Party has, like, a huge obsession with keeping things the same, which is kind of ironic considering, like, conservatives are usually the ones who are trying to, conserve the status quo. And especially, now with conservatives relying more and more on alternative media and, picking outside the norm candidates, the fact that they basically, like, completely changed the party in general to go towards populism. And of course, in the past, we had stuff like the Tea Party on the right, but closest we got to that on the left has been Bernie Sanders, and, well, we all know how that ended up turning out. I think that, yeah, that's a big thing that I feel like people have to kind of reckon with, and I do, like, hope that the Democratic Party can stop shooting themselves in the foot. I mean, like, I think it's a legitimate problem, and I will be the first to say that, and I will be the first to say that, like, for example, Biden and those who were, directly around him did not want to, give up power or to not go ahead and, cease running. And that led to a bunch of other issues. So I just think that, that superdelegates, I'm not a fan of either as far as those situations with primaries. It's just, like, a big thing that I agree needs change. I don't appreciate the, haha, you guys are cooked, haha, well, yeah, I guess you can all go home or vote Republican. It's like, I think that's pretty bad faith, but, other than that, I think that there is improvement to make.
All right. Last but not least, Soy Bill.
Yeah, I just like Prime, I'm very disappointed in Joe Biden as a candidate. I don't like that we had to reelect him. I wish the primary process was a little more stringent, but he was the incumbent. And even I think, I don't know how public these statements were, was saying at the beginning of this, before when people were like, oh, he should drop out. I was like, I don't know if that's like politically worth it. We'd lose so much momentum. I understand the Democrats were in a very, very difficult position. I think the cover up was bad, but hey, come on. Like, we all saw what was happening. It wasn't as much of a cover up as it was, hey, we don't want to politically shoot ourselves in the foot. And I agree that with most, if not, I guess everyone here, there's really nothing criminal to pursue. Now, to Prime's point about this monster of a party that will not consolidate and will not change because they don't have to. I do agree, although I'm kind of okay with that because that seems to be what's happening on the right. And I just want to counter that. So however we do that, if we got to push Joe Biden 2028, all right, the prostate cancer, he's going to overcome it, and I'm there for it. I'm voting for him. I'm riding with Biden for a third, maybe even a fourth term if we get rid of the 22nd. Thanks everyone for being here. Thanks for inviting me, Gibbs. Thanks for re-meeting you, Prime. And Lactoid, specifically to you, I want to say I didn't smell a sniff of bad faith in this whole debate. And as someone who thinks you are in a lot of debates, I really do actually sincerely appreciate that. I think you're fun to talk to when you're not defending the Russian stealing of children in Ukraine. So thanks for that. Appreciate it.
Gibbs adjacent.
I'd rather
streamer.
that than the
Gibbs
Ukraine
adjacent
stuff,
stream.
honestly.
Well, on that note,
Can I shout myself out?
Yes, go ahead, Ron.
Because I didn't do it before.
go ahead.
Find me on the Prime Kai channel, PrimeCayes. We have debates like this all the time. You'll see a lot of the same cast here, right? Lactoid being bad faith as always. That's where he does it most of the time. No, he's fantastic. But yeah, come check me out on Twitch and YouTube. Sorry.
Yeah, we're there Mondays. It's good times. He's got a lot of good shows. Yeah, so and speaking of good shows, we're going to have another panel in 30 minutes talking about, or about 15 minutes now, talking about leftist violence. And guess what? We're banning whataboutism about January 6th. I want to have the combo today and not just hear about how bad January 6th was for the 375th panel. Like, that's what we're going to do. We're going to talk about things. So that's what's going to happen here in about 15 minutes. I'm
So
excited.
it's a BLM debate. So is
Yeah.
that what you're saying? Okay.
Well, it can be about all sorts of stuff. BLM can come up. We can talk about other things, too. No, I don't want it to be just BLM either. But we'll talk about some stuff. It's going to be exciting. Good times. That's about 15 minutes. Till then, everybody, goodbye. We're going to do something right now. So we'll see y'all soon. Some of these people will be back. Some of these won't. But follow everybody.
Right
It's
on.
good times. All right. So what we're going to do now, I'm going to put on something real quick. I need to make a snack. I ordered food. I'm just going to heat something up. Because I'm starving. I haven't eaten all day. And I think that we can watch. Should we start the Piers Morgan thing now, or should we start that? Yeah, we can start that now, and we can watch the rest of it after.
Joe Biden used him for decades. All of these terrible things that happened, there was nobody home.
Let's release all the health records of President Biden, who is not president. I also want the health records of Donald Trump. Specifically, I want the records of his failed assassination attempt. You know, the bullet that grazed the ear.
With respect, you are beginning to sound like a mad conspiracy theorist.
There is an unbelievable layer of conspiracies here. The scandal is that the media ran in cahoots with the Democrat machine or the Biden machine or whatever you want to call it.
Trump is talking about Biden. The conservatives are talking about Biden. Everybody is talking about Biden. There is no scandal. There is no evidence of any scandal whatsoever. It's just more conservatives demonstrating again that they know nothing about medicine.
James Comey is a huge weirdo with artistic pretensions. Either Comey is the dumbest person on earth, or he knew what he was doing. And I want to be charitable. I think he kind of knows.
As a personal matter, everybody should feel nothing but genuine sympathy and concern for Joe Biden and his health. As a political matter, everybody should feel absolutely entitled to ask difficult questions. The Democratic Party, led by Joe Biden, said he was not only fit to be commander-in-chief, but to do it all again for another 4 years. Meanwhile, as Jake Tapper's book reports, he didn't recognize his friend and world-famous actor George Clooney. He forgot the names of even his closest and longest-serving aides. He was so frail, the staffers wanted to put him in a wheelchair and prevented even members of the cabinet from seeing him. The worries about his cognitive decline go back to at least 2019. Well, now we know that he probably had cancer for a large part of his presidency, but somehow, inexplicably, perhaps even defying credibility,
Excuse me, I just
was not detected,
walked
or
away.
certainly not in a way that was related to the American public. Democrats are rightly upset that so much attention is being absorbed by the last president and not the current one. But who exactly is to blame
thanks
for
for the
that?
raid.
Oh, right, yeah, it's them, isn't it? The people who said Joe Biden was fitter than a racehorse and smart enough for Mensa at a time when he should have been probably in a nursing home. it's very fair to ask, why should anybody trust them ever again? We're here to thrash it out. As the host of the Michael Knowles Show on Daily Wire, Michael Knowles, the streamer and commentator Destiny, Wajahat Ali, the host of the Democracy-ish podcast, and the Rubin Report host Dave Rubin, whose Don't Burn This World tour is heading for Hungary, Israel, and Australia, but disappointingly, I have to say, not to the United Kingdom as yet. But I await.
I thought you had me banned already. Isn't that what happened? We tried to come again.
No, we haven't. We're all wokies are banned, but you're allowed in. Well, gentlemen, welcome to all of you. All been on Uncensored many times. Mike, let me start with you, Michael Knowles. It's a legitimate question. You know, I was appalled by the abuse, open mockery, and glee that greeted the news that President Biden has advanced aggressive cancer that's metastasized to his bones. Simply because on a human level, whether it was him or Donald Trump or anybody else, I just think if we've reached a point where the reaction to an elderly man potentially dying is treated with great glee, when they've served 50 years as a politician, I just think, sorry, I think it crosses the line. However,
Piers, I didn't see a lot of glee in the reaction. I'm not even just flacking for the GOP. From the established mainstream guys, I saw a lot of concern, pray for Joe
I'm not talking
Biden
about mainstream. I'm talking about general, like, people on social media. And I think it's indicative of where social media's gone. It's become, as we all know, because we've all got a big following, it's become a sewer and a cesspit. Right. And I just think it's actually, interestingly to what you just said, it's incumbent on people who are in the more mainstream, if you like, and I would include all of us here in a way. It's important for us, I think, to try and moderate that kind of stuff as best we can by leading by example. However, it's an important example, however.
How much should good car insurance cost you a month? $80? $120? Nope. Try $30.
I'm just not buying this sequence of events. When I saw Ezekiel Emanuel on MSNBC talking about the fact that from his position as a very, very eminent oncologist, it just defies credibility. They just discovered this about Joe Biden, that in his estimation, they probably knew about this or should have known or must have known for maybe 4 or 5 years, even before he got elected before. Just to me, none of this adds up because I've had PSA tests. I mean, I'm 60, right? I've had them in my 50s. Most men do. And if you're the president of the United States, you're getting test after test after test after test. So what do we think we're dealing with here?
I think J.D. Vance exemplified the right reaction here, which is you say, look, we pray for the guy who has cancer, and we're all headed for the dust at some point. So let's not be too cruel about it.
Sorry, guys, I'm
but
shouting
also,
down real quick.
Don't allow our sympathy to distract us from the legitimate.
Scarving it down a lot faster than normally would, just so I can get this next panel here.
Which is, we were lied to. We were lied to by the White House doctor. That White House doctor should probably lose his medical license. Either way, if you're telling me he somehow didn't catch it until moments ago, he's a terrible doctor or he's a liar. Either way, he needs to face serious consequences. The White House staff lied, the media lied, the Jake Tappers of the world lied, and that's a very serious problem because we already had very little trust in our established institutions after COVID. Now you've got the public health officials, the White House doctor, and you've got the White House staff yet again lying to us. One big irony in all of this, at a really low-end political level, the Democrats, when Biden's decline became clear, they decided to throw him out and replace him with Kamala Harris. And just knowing how life expectancy and metastatic cancer progresses, the Democrats would have had a much better chance getting Kamala Harris into the White House had they not instituted a coup d'etat on Joe Biden. Had they just been, I don't know, a little bit more straightforward about everything, they might have gotten what they wanted, but their deceit did them in.
Yeah, Wajahat, I mean, whichever way you look at this, it just stinks, the sequence of events, doesn't it? I mean, does anybody believe that they have suddenly discovered about a recent president of the United States, that he's got aggressive cancer in this manner? I mean, the White House said today, as come out and said, the last time that, not the White House, but Biden's people have come out and said the last time he had a PSA test was 2014. For fear it would be raised and raise concerns. I just don't believe that. Why would a man in his 70s not have another PSA test for 10, 11 years?
So I know we love conspiracy theories on this show, but let me just say first and foremost, as a father of a stage 4 cancer survivor, my daughter had a full liver transplant. When I left my daughter, she was perfectly healthy, 2 years old, 6 years ago, and then she had some bumps. My wife took her to the emergency room, and then they found out that she had stage 4 cancer. That's how it happens. So for anyone who is suffering from cancer, anyone who has a lost one, who died from cancer, sometimes it creeps up. That's number one for people to know, and hopefully people will know more about cancer as this Trump administration has cut 31% of cancer research in the first 100 days. Just want people to know that. Hopefully no one has to go through this. We went through it. Joe Biden right now has stage 4 cancer that has metastasized to the bone.
Sorry, with respect, Jaya, let me stop you. You're distracting. You're very good at distracting. We're not a show that
No, not at all. I'm trying to inform your audience.
I'm not a show that loves conspiracy theories. I love talking about the reality behind conspiracy theories. Often conspiracy theories, as we've discovered in the last few years, turn out to be correct. So I'm prepared to give everything a fair hearing.
That is not true.
Well, they sometimes they do, right? Some conspiracy theories turn out to be true. And then the people who call them conspiracy theories sound like idiots. I don't like promoting wild, nonsensical conspiracy theories. I don't think it's a conspiracy theory to have expected a president of the United States in his 70s to have had a basic test that all men over the age of about 55 are encouraged to have on a regular basis. I don't believe them. And I think that is
All right,
and if it turns out to be that
you might agree with me on this.
Go on.
You actually might agree with me on this. So here, let me just finish. Joe Biden is a very old man. Breaking news. He's 82 years old. I agree with you that Joe Biden should not have run or even announced that he was run for president, right? He was supposed to be a one-term president. I believe Joe Biden did immense damage to the Democratic Party and Kamala Harris by announcing at a very late stage that he wouldn't run, and he was pressured not to run. I think he made a huge mistake. He's 82 years old. Now, I'm all for fair and balance. And I don't know, I'm going to take my Republican counterparts, my MAGA counterparts out there at their word right now. Let's have fair and balance. I'm all here. Let's release all the public records. Let's release all the health records of President Biden, who is not president. Also, let's also focus on the man who's currently president, Donald Trump. He's the oldest person to ever be elected president. He's about to turn 79 years old. I want the health records of Joe Biden. I also want the health records of Donald Trump. Specifically, I want the records of his failed assassination attempt. You know, the bullet that grazed the ear. That is very traumatic for anybody, especially a 78-year-old man. Release all the health records. Number one. Number two.
Wow, you're sounding
Donald
like
Trump,
a man.
Sorry,
Vijaya. You are sounding
50-50.
With respect,
Let's do 50-50.
With respect, you are beginning to sound like a mad conspiracy theorist. Dry skin, deeper wrinkles, and crepiness are just a few of the visible signs of aging. Also, I'm told. Fortunately, today's show is sponsored by One Skin. They're 15%.
I agree with Sean.
Why use Mill when I have a curbside compost bin? Mill and this lovely bin are a match made in heaven. I've gone from emptying my compost pail every night to maybe once or twice a month, saving me hundreds of trips up and down my apartment stairs. Mill takes almost everything: peels, avocado pits, even meat and dairy. It takes weeks to fill, so it feels practically bottomless. That means fewer trips out to your curbside compost bin or backyard compost pile.
I agree with Sean in the ear. We do not have the health records. Those health records were not made public. I agree with Sean in the ear. I was on your show. He was shot. He survived. Release the public health records of Donald Trump. Release the public health records of Joe Biden. I want to remind everyone, the oldest man to be elected is president right now, Donald Trump. Who did I say was cover-up? I'm saying, let's be honest. I'm taking you at your word.
I was trying to establish. Are you saying that you are agreeing with your MAGA counterparts that there was a cover-up on Joe Biden's ill health?
People do not trust the establishment. People do not trust the Democratic establishment. People do not trust the Republican establishment. I want Americans to be informed. I agree with you. Joe Biden is a very old man. He's 82 years old. I agree with you. He should not run again. I agree with you that the Democratic establishment probably hid his decline. We saw it in real time. But what I'm also seeing right now is unfair and unbalanced coverage, because President Biden ain't president. Donald Trump is president. 78 years old, about to be 79, has never been on a bike, talks about groceries like he invented the word, he's brought it back, has fallen asleep.
You're steaming off.
I'm sorry.
Well, you're going off on one of your you're very good at distracting. You're very good at distracting, but let me bring in.
Donald Trump has fallen asleep 3 times publicly in the past 3 weeks. He's 79 years old.
Donald Trump has the energy, as everybody knows, whether you love him or hate him, he's got the energy of a 30-year-old, right? So what? Let's just not go down.
Tell him to ride a bike.
Yeah, Joe Biden.
Tell him to ride a bike.
Joe Biden was basically
Biden rode a
walking
bike
zombie.
last week. Tell him to ride a bike.
All right, let me bring in Dave Rubin.
Tell
Dave,
Donald Trump to ride a bike.
All right, which I gave you a good hearing. Dave Rubin,
Well,
I think
Piers,
the point here, Dave, isn't it? It's just about the fact that there is a general belief, fueled by the Jake Tapper, Alex Thompson book that's coming out now, which many people look at them and say, well, you should have blown the whistle before. They kind of admit that. Both of them have admitted that, so I think credit to them for doing that. But what the book seems to reveal is what many of us said very publicly many times. Joe Biden was unfit to be president of the United States. Cognitively, physically, any other way you care to strip it. That matters. And the reason the cancer story now matters is if it turns out that they knew he had prostate cancer, which was metastasized, we don't know when, and, you know,
Wow, Pitbull Raid. Woo! Let's see who's coming in for this next one here. I got it fixed. Look at the mirror, bro. A&M looking good in baseball. I told you that. You see, what else did A&M do the other day? I told you they're pretty good. I don't remember what combo we were having about. How's the beefs? Beefs are good. Busy. I'm about to be able to pay off a loan. And by the end of June, that I've been paying for like 10 years. Oh, it's going to be glorious. I've been able to do it like way earlier because of the beef prices. Yeah, I mean, but here's the thing, Landon. Here's a big one. It's still baseball. It's not like it's football. But Tennessee don't want none of A&M. Let me tell you that. There's a reason why we barely play Tennessee. Because they don't want these hands. You know what I'm saying? They don't want the hands. Get the stream together going. Tennessee baseball, bro. This guy got them jokes. How you doing? You doing all right?
Yeah, I'm doing pretty good.
Good. What's new in the non-farm bubble? What's exciting? What's happening?
Honestly, not much. I don't know. I've just been doing the most like lazy. It's not entirely lazy, like reaction content, and then trying to churn that out and edit it for YouTube views. But it's been mostly fun, I guess.
Yeah, I hate the editing. That's the biggest thing. That's why I don't do like TikToks and shit. Because I'm like, I gotta find this clip. We gotta edit it for TikTok. Put it on there, and I'm just like, nope, don't want to do that.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
We need to learn one of them AIs just automatically do it for us. I'm sure they actually have one that does that.
They do, and I've used them before. They're not super good from my experience. They won't crop people's cameras correctly. The captions will usually be fine unless people are talking over each other. But the issue is the good clips are when people are talking over each other. That's the that's the heated. That's the moments you want to clip. But
yeah, that's true. Doesn't know what the caption, huh?
Yeah.
Mm-mm. You get cap, yeah. That's what the chat's saying as well. I see. The captions give you problems. Give me 1 second here. Yeah, sorry guys, let me just do one thing real quick here. A few people running late. They're coming though. We'll get it going in a second.
What if I told you the second?
Oh.
Floor and Decor. As a small business owner,
Prostate cancer does.
Yeah, guys, we'll give like a couple minutes here to see who's coming. I had the people coming. But we'll wait here. Sometimes people run late here. Let's see here. We're gonna go post in the group chat. See where they coming, where they at, where they coming. Otherwise, it's gonna be me and Anfang for a minute here talking about all the bullshit. You know what I'm saying? Which is fine. After what panel? Let me change this. Leftist vibe. Damn it. Wrong button. Okay. Mm-mm-mm. We're gonna give them about 5 minutes here, not mine, and then we'll just call it if they don't show up. I'm not gonna force the panel here. I think we had all had people agree. I know Katya said she'd be late, but I don't know where Buckaroo's at or other ones here. Let's see. Oh, they're waiting. There we go. Okay, I knew we have. As long as we got a few people, we'll run it here.
Hello, hello.
How you doing?
I'm all right. How are you?
Ah, living the dream. Living the dream here.
Yeah. Much better than living the nightmare.
Maybe. Depends on the nightmare.
Sure. I don't really have many nightmares, I will say.
Yeah, I used to have a sleep paralysis demon, and now he's got like a restraining order.
Nice. Hi. Oh, shit. Alrighty, how are you guys?
I'm good.
How are
Pretty
you,
good.
non-fawn? Sorry. Yeah, one of you didn't answer.
Mostly good. Yeah.
Mostly.
Uh,
Why mostly?
yeah. I don't know. I woke up. I woke up like 30 minutes ago. Okay, I don't have. I
Oh,
don't have
okay.
enough experience with the day.
Yeah,
to
your
tell
day
you how-
hasn't existed enough.
exactly.
Where do you live?
In North Carolina.
Oh my god,
with the worst
non-fawn!
barbecue. With the worst barbecue.
Non-fawn, 8 p.m. Are you fully nocturnal?
Basically.
Damn, I was, see, I'm trying to get, oh, sweetheart, I'm so sorry. My cat found the bag of chips I accidentally put on her bed. I've been trying really hard not to go as nocturnal as you, but I was last week on like waking up at 5. So no judgment. My sleep's been so bad lately, so I couldn't judge you for
My sleep schedule is definitely dictated
late.
by the heat. Like if it's like really really hot outside, I'll like wake up in the morning because I'm not as cold. I'm like, oh okay, I guess it's fucking 9 a.m. I got shit to do today, you know. Or if it's like during the winter, I'm like, oh, it's total nocturnal. I'm just like sleeping like a baby.
Yeah. I need stuff to do in the morning. Like it's just easier for me that way because then I get up, I do the shit in the morning, and then I have the rest of the day and I actually stay awake. Otherwise, if it's stuff in the afternoon, I'm waking up like right before I got to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it's a mess. So, can I read you the name of this dissertation? Are either of you live right now?
Yeah, I'm live. But we're
I
definitely
am.
yeah.
Yeah.
I thought so, but I wanted to make sure. The name of this dissertation that I want to read further in depth. It's 106 pages, so I haven't read the whole thing, but I've skimmed bits and pieces. It's called Classism, Ableism, and the Rise of Epistemic Injustice Against White Working Class Men from 2017 to 2019.
Yes, they're keeping the white man down, bro. We all knew it.
For real.
Everybody knew that was what's happening. It's about time someone studied the plight of the white man. It's about time.
No, quite literally. It seems pretty good. Like I'm excited to read it. Because this is the exact kind of conversation that I was having like around that time, which was just we can't be mean to literally everybody and then be like, anyway, you should figure out what we want and then give it to us. Like at some point you have to be willing to explain your side. And I think depending on what group you're in, there are like some leftists who are not willing to explain their side at all.
Yeah. Well, on that note, let's just go ahead and get started. I think Katya should be here in a few minutes, so we'll get going on the leftist violence thing. Let's give it a chance to tell y'all who you are, what y'all think. Is leftist violence a problem? It's rising. We're gonna try to not bring up January 6th because every time we do one of these panels,
I really don't.
It's always January 6th. Y'all aren't usually the culprits. I will give y'all credit for that, but there are a lot of people that anytime any topic comes up that's remotely like this is January 6th, and we can't talk about nothing else. So that's my one caveat. I'll let you go ahead and open it up, Buckaroo, and tell us what you think. Is this a problem? What Jewish people were killed outside the
I
the
heard,
museum was yesterday. So I feel like it's a rising
Embassy.
tide. Yeah, the embassies.
Officials.
So let's talk about it. Go ahead.
Well, I'm Big Papa Buckaroo. I do think there is at least some of an issue with leftist rhetoric online. Obviously, I think the online justification of violence is like wrong. I think you shouldn't be dancing in the streets to two random people being shot point blank in the streets. Like I think that's just mean. I think it's a cruel way to look at life. And Katya and I were talking about this yesterday a little bit. I don't know if you were listening to that part, Gibbs, but I think a lot of leftists are focusing their energies towards revenge. And I think, at least for me as a leftist, revenge is like antithetical to the movement. So when you are so revenge fueled and you're not really considering the actual principles of leftism and how you'd want to implement them, you're just allowing yourself to be caught up in the public craze, And at the end of the day, that's not really what's going to move policy forward. That's not really what's going to organize people or help vulnerable communities. So,
all right,
that's my position.
Mr. Nonfon.
Yeah, as long as there's no real conservatives here to to bring up January 6th too. I think I'm fine saying I don't like a lot of sort of the like totally anti-establishment, totally like anti-American, usually pretty like far left people. Cough cough Hassan, and I feel like with the obviously, based on what we just saw, based on what you just mentioned, the two people shot at the Israeli embassy or whatever, I do feel like sometimes people skirt way too close towards like justifying that stuff. I think, on the left, and it like to an extent, the same thing happened with Luigi. Although I will again mention it does feel like a lot of times the more clean divide, it's not like left right, but like anti-establishment and pro-establishment, and that's why we see a lot of anti-establishment people on the right also basically endorsing Luigi.
I mean, sorry. Finish your point. I just got excited to keep telling you.
Oh, that was my finishing. Don't worry, you're good.
Yeah. I mean, I am personally anti-establishment to a considerable degree. I don't know if you guys know, I was arguing. I wouldn't say in complete defense of Luigi's actions, but more. I did make the argument that it's kind of just an expression of the political tension that we're experiencing right now when you look at it from like a more macro level. I don't remember what the other point I was going to make was. Gibbs, what do you think?
Yeah, I think it's a problem. I think it's a big problem. People can point to the right, and like I know the January 6th thing comes up, but like when I'm sitting here thinking about like right leaning like problems, the other one I always hear is like, oh well, the righties don't want to talk about like when a school shooting happens. I'm like, well, sure, you might get an extremist school shooter, but like everybody on the right is like, that's bad. Right, like no one's like, yeah, that guy, he was a good guy for shooting up that kindergarten. Like nobody's doing that, right? Yeah, and like so when we go and we're talking about this, like I don't know if it's the same, but on the left, like you brought up Luigi, you just said you were like, oh, I'm willing to defend at least the idea behind what he did, maybe not him actually doing it, or like, I mean, I'm just paraphrasing, but like, and I think
that's
this
not really what I said either.
Sure. Well, yeah, we could dive into it, but what I'm saying is, I think overall this is a very like like indicative of a bad problem. I think maybe the revenge thing is true, right? Like to some extent, but it's this idea that we didn't win the vote, and now it's someone else's turn to lead. Like I'm not saying Republicans were like just like saints, right? Like I
I
definitely
actually
think we did
don't.
shit.
I
But
don't even think it's because of the vote alone. I have to say, you guys keep relating this back to the vote. I actually think this is a much greater issue than just the vote, which is why I keep saying I think this is a product of like current political tensions. It's not just the fact that Trump is in office that everybody's behaving this way.
I mean, I think it's the
this would have
catalyst for
happened.
sure.
I think I don't even
Um,
know if I would say this was the only catalyst, because I think
don't
if there
know,
were
only.
other political, I think if there were other if there were any other like seemingly conservative or Republican events to occur in America, I think people might have responded similarly, just because to me the left was like, it's like this was the final straw. This was
Well, I
not
agree with that. I agree with
not the
that.
catalyst as much as it was just like
Well, I agree with that to some
I think
extent.
those are a little different.
Well, like hear me out here. I think yeah, we got content here now, but I think you're like right about a lot of that, right? Like I'll give you an example. There was with Texas, right? We had the big thing with the Eagle Pass, and they like brought the guard in. They stood up, and I said if Trump actually had been killed during the assassin, I think we might have been on the precipice of a civil war, right? Because I think that
absolutely.
Republicans were not going to accept that we didn't win if he got killed. Like unless like Vance won, which I think probably would have happened in a landslide if that had happened. It would probably be the biggest election in history. But like I think that if he had been killed and he didn't win, they'd have been like revolution, right? I truly believe that would have happened. But so like I get the violence, but I feel like at that point it's almost like justified. What we're having now, where it's like, oh, you drive a Tesla. 2 out of 5 people that drive Teslas report their cars have been vandalized, right? And I'm just like, okay, this is crazy. These are the same people that were buying Teslas to, like save the environment like 8 years ago, right? Like and I'm just like, okay, I like. Do we think that's beneficial? Like they're shooting like anybody that's Jewish now. It seems like like it's fine to be racist against the Jews, and that's like. That used to be like a far right or like Nazi socialist thing only, right? Okay, and now that's mainstream. We have like fucking they are socialist. We're not debating that one today.
Okay.
Or we have like Hassan over here having like a Houthi terrorist literally on his show. Like I feel like it's more like accepted than like, hey, if whatever we're gonna go to violence versus on the right, it's like I guess maybe it's because the gun culture. Like, I guess there's more like, hey, you have this natural fear of violence, and like we're willing to escalate it, but it's like you don't want to. I don't know. It seems different to me. I don't know. Katya, go ahead. What's your thoughts?
I think it's really like violence either like happens for kind of one or two reasons. Usually, it's a combination of the two. One, somebody's like just kind of crazy, or two, people feel like that's the option that they have to get some sort of political result. So, I mean, obviously, like there's some form of crazy mixed in with the vast majority of those cases. But I feel like, I mean, obviously, like, you're going to see more, like left-wing violence or whatever when we talk about like when there's a Republican in office, especially with the kind of like, both houses of Congress and the Supreme Court and the president thing. But what I will say about a lot of it is I will honestly say that a lot of the things like aren't that we're talking about, like we talked about Hassan, we talked about a lot of the the pro-Palestine people or whatever. There was like violence in these groups or like some anti-Semitism. Like I definitely like feel like that's a problem, and I feel like that's like definitely like should be distinguished as an extremism problem, because generally that's not been like a mainstream position of the left as far as like the politically involved left to just support the Houthis and like terrorist groups in the Middle East.
Obviously, yeah.
It's becoming a problem of the left. That's kind of where I'm like going with this.
Online,
like a little bit, right? Like you said, Hassan's not mainstream, right? Like,
No.
but okay, like let's like argue.
he's like one of the
who is
biggest
mainstream, right?
leftist
Like like I would argue
creators.
Destiny's mainstream now, right? Like he was
Yes.
just on Piers Morgan now, and Destiny's smaller than Hassan. Hassan's been on Piers. I like my parents know who Hassan is. They probably knew who Hassan was
Well.
before I was, and like, which is crazy because they saw him on fucking Piers, and I'd never seen it before, right? And then I got further into the space, and I suddenly found out probably about like last TwitchCon who Hassan was, and I'm like, okay, so like that feels like that's mainstream. Like, you like don't think that it's
There are
concerning?
no.
What do you mean mainstream? Do you
pol-
mean in size or in like beliefs? Because I was saying more like the ideological
Well, if it's
situation
the
with the
size,
Overton
isn't
window.
that, well, if it's the well, I guess that's my question then. If it's the size, how big and how many people do you have to believe this before this is like a mainstream like thought in the party, like or in the group, like.
Well,
You know what?
I
I think it's different because
there's
Go
no.
ahead, Nova, go ahead.
Yeah, there's no politician that really aligns with Hassan. Like
Yeah.
Ilhan Omar?
there are a few.
no, he's
not
further
serious.
extreme than Ilhan
No.
Omar by far.
I would say Hassan is also like very flagrant. He's like very flippant. He's very like egotistical in a way that is very different from Ilhan Omar. Like I think he responds directly by saying shit like, "Isn't that the guy that got fucked in the eye hole?" versus versus this woman who's just like actually trying to do her job.
Well, do you? Well, I guess what I'm asking is like,
Even
I
if
feel
you
like
disagree with like how she's doing
Well,
it, you know,
he's-
I would say there's one that's like much more obviously aggressive, much more like clearly immoral, no matter where you stand. There's one doing wrong.
Well, I mean, but he's
compared
also like representing a large group of people watching him that are like going to be like voting going forward, right? Like maybe they're not
Okay.
in there now.
No, they're not going to be
don't
voting.
No, they're not. No,
You
they're
don't think
not.
they
Don't
don't
pull
even
their
vote for
voting.
They're
Democrats.
No, they
anti-electoralist.
don't vote. Yes,
Exactly.
most of these
Oh, so
people
it's a
are
psyop.
not actually. This is why it's not even a psyop. It's
It's a
just
joke.
these
No.
are online.
It's the CIA.
Well, I
bro.
honestly, I've talked about this.
No.
I've like made references to this many times, but it's honestly just like a community of people online who think that talking is activism, and talking to one another on Twitter and YouTube and all of you on Twitch is activism. Unironically, that is the community of people that you're talking about, and they don't vote because they don't support the system at all. They think that voting is supporting the system. Or they're just fucking lazy. No offense. Actually, offense. Don't
Yeah,
be
I
so
mean,
lazy that you can't have a voice.
you won't see these people taking the electoral system seriously. And I mean, people who they did support, they'll immediately not support them as soon as they go any way towards like the average voter after getting into office. Like it happened with AOC, it happened with even like Ilhan Omar and Rashida Tlaib as well, where you'll get people saying that they're patsies because they moderated their positions like after gaining office.
Right. I'm sure there's almost certainly a clip of Hassan like condemning Ilhan Omar because he thinks
There is.
she's too moderate on some issue or something, or she's not doing enough to.
It's just so funny to me to think about all the people that are like in these online spaces who are essentially just lambasting anybody who's like not as far left as them, where if they were actually active in politics, they would know that they have to interact with these people all the fucking time just to get anything done. Like no matter where you are, like unless you're volunteering at like a soup kitchen, you're probably going to meet like hundreds of people who have extremely like starkly different perspectives about what you should and should not do in life, and you have to be able to argue your point. It's not just about like condemning people. And I think that's a whole part of the problem with like the online left. Honestly, I could bitch about them forever.
I have insider information for how the online left is when they go offline. Because I had friends who were like when I was in college and stuff, like, and before I moved to an area where it is not really a city, back then I had quite a few friends. Actually, a couple of my neighbors were members of the PSL. So I was bored and like went to their meetings a couple of times because I'm like, you know what, I'm a leftist, good enough, I don't care. And it's literally just talking about historical figures and bloviating about theory, which I'm very good at. So they were all like, oh my gosh, please speak more. But I'm like, bro, maybe we should vote. What are you
literally
doing?
just bitch. They just talk and they bitch. That's all they fucking do. It amazes me that bro.
Well, they were third worldists, so I mean, like, yeah, you're
but
not
hold
really
on,
getting anywhere with that.
Well, here's what I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. Okay, but those are the same kind. Like maybe those specific ones aren't the ones. But like this seems like it's the exact same thing as when we used to have like the right wingers be on the 4chan all the time, and then they go nuts and go postal somewhere, right? And they'd get brainwashed. But except now it's like literally endorsed by someone with like 20,000 concurrent viewers on like at any given time, right? And now like it's like now we have a community of all these people coming together, except on the leftist side this time, and it's almost like tangentially endorsed. And I think there's one big factor that's different, right? And Greg Gutterfield brings this up. Like on the Republican side, many Republicans they like go and vote Republican, right? But their identity isn't like I'm a Republican. Their identity is like I play baseball, or I'm a welder, or oh I go to church every Sunday, or like I'm a Baptist, or it's like they have like another like identity that's not their like them. But versus on the left, it feels like very much like your political identity is your identity, or it's like replaced religion to some extent. And so whenever there's like somebody like a Republican office, it's like your personal identity has been rejected, and it's like leading people to violence. It's I don't know. That's kind of my pet theory. It seems like.
Well, there are a couple. There are so many things you've said. I think one of the first things when it comes to like leftism, there's this phrase: "The personal is political." This is a common phrase amongst a lot of people on the left, especially in online communities. The personal is political because they're talking about things like their identity, like their racial identity, their like immigration status, like their sexual identity, like their gender identity, and all of those feel like they're being directly legislated upon because in many cases they are. And so the personal is political to a lot of them. So for a lot of leftists, when it comes to politics, it is deeply personal to them because they feel like they are directly affected by it. And so even people who may not be as like maybe it's a cisgender heterosexual white man in his mid to late 20s whatever, because you have this frame of reference of the personal is political, you can then also use that as the lens through which you like see every other interaction you have with the environment. You know what I mean? Like now you're not just thinking about how you had a shitty experience at McDonald's. You're thinking about, how the corporation is just making McDonald's, like this specific McDonald's, so worn down because they just don't care about their workers and they want to make sure that their workers end up getting injured on the job. And like there are so many other things that you can add into it if you just follow the idea that the personal is political. And if you don't have any other principles, I think personally, that are like a part of leftism that you're sticking to and you're only using your identity as a driving force, it makes it really hard to be active and not be like hurt and, honestly kind of pissy sometimes when you are trying to make changes.
I'm not convinced this doesn't happen with a lot of MAGA people, though, Gibbs. I'm
I mean,
fairly.
I'm not
fairly
saying
certain
there's
there are
no
plenty
MAGA
of-
people. I'm just saying. I think it's
it's in
more
a
on one
different.
side than the other. I think there's different problems. I'm sure there are some MAGA people that are like, if you insult God Emperor Trump, I'm coming for you. I'm sure there's a few
MAGA
of those
peeps
people.
are the biggest fanboys and fangirls with your merch and your little
merch is
Trump
good.
conventions
they
and your
really-
little
they are
cardboard
buyers, bro.
counts and
Yeah.
So don't be mad
there's
because Trump has got better merch. Don't be mad. He's got good merch.
I just think that's why this happens on the left. Like I absolutely agree there are people who make it emotional on the right. I think there might be a different mechanism. I don't know. I just think that's why it's happening a lot.
At least it's about their actual, personal and in certain circumstances, of course, their, immutable characteristic type identity as opposed to, a politician that they think represents how they're mad about shit.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean, like to some extent, but then, like, I'll give you an example, right? Let's go with this prenatalist bombing. I'm gonna be honest. I don't think I'd ever heard the words like antinatalist or whatever before in my life up until that, and then I read it and I was like, "Is this really a thing?" Yeah, no,
Really?
no, I'm not following the anti-natalist movement. Like the fact that there's an
Well,
anti-natalist
you hear
movement,
about things.
I mean, maybe I'd read that there's an anti-natalist movie. I don't know, but like, let's just say if
Oh,
I
I just
did,
know
it's within the
anti-natalist.
only 3 times I've ever heard the words anti-natalist, and it's the only time I've ever heard like anti-natalist bombing. And I guess this speaks more to what kind of world we live in now that I just wasn't even fazed by it. But I did get it, and I'm like, okay, surely no one's in favor of this. And then I go on Twitter or I go on Facebook, and I see like a large swath of people. And they're all Dems, and they're like are like people I know that lean Dem, and they're not like official Dems, but they're all like, yeah, who would want to bring kids into this world? I could understand wanting to bomb an IMF. Trump supports IMF or whatever, and like we need to blow this up. And I'm like, what? Like, isn't this just a terrorist attack? Like, this would be like if like a right wing like Christian nationalist went and shot up a school, and then everybody was like, hey. Yeah, that guy's a good guy. Good for him for shooting up the kindergarten. Like, it's a little crazy to me. I feel like, come on.
So I'll the face believe that some people have said, you know what, like by all like on an ideological or philosophical basis, the concept of anti-natalism might have some legs to it, and they don't want to bring children into this world or whatever. But I'm not going to believe on its face that you saw like all these people saying, yeah, this indiscriminate like bombing in which people died, like that was Gucci, and like also, like, yeah, it's super good that part of it happened.
They were more like, oh, I understand. Why? Who would want to bring kids this world? We should be fighting the fight against the system, kind of thing. That's what they were saying. Like,
did they say the bombing was good? Because I feel like these are two.
Hold on. I mean, you know what I'm saying. There's a difference between outright being like, hey, that bombing, that guy's sank, like, whoever, right? But there's also like a problem when people like, well, I'm just saying, he might have had some good points, like that's also bad. And, whenever they're sitting here going, hey, he made his point through violence, like, he brought attention to the cause. Like, do you not see where that leads to the more violence category?
I guess so. I just feel like those, like, if we're going to discuss it, like, I feel like there's a difference between people who are maybe making, like, a poor, like, political take as far as, like, taking advantage or of, like, the increased discussion around what they care about because of a violent act versus those who think that the violent act was on its face moral or good and should happen more. Like, I feel like those are super, super, like, different. If we're going to be discussing them, we should kind of separate them.
I would also, I don't have data on this, but I would guess that like right wingers attacking like abortion clinics or whatever is probably more common than anti-natalists attacking IVF clinics or whatever. Like,
I mean, that wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah, I'd be willing to bet on that.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised me at all, to be like totally honest. Like, I could definitely see some like Christian nationalist organizations. I just don't think that it seems to be like there's this like tangential, like I can like point to it like in a much larger thing where it seems there's like a level of acceptance, right? Like if I look at like let's look at the abortion clinic argument, right? Like if I go and ask, like, and I guess maybe this falls in the same category as what I was kind of just describing. If I go ask a bunch of Christians like that are like hardcore, like I don't know, don't wear blue jeans as sin Christians, whether or not like they are in favor of the abortion bombings, they're going to be like, no, but I'm glad the abortion clinic's gone. Now, will I agree that probably leads to some tangential level of violence? Yes, I probably would agree with that, right? Because they're like, yeah, it's gone. That's a good thing, net positive, but if people died in the thing, that's bad. They're going to like condemn violence as the being thing. However, I think even then that's a pretty like higher fringe than like people that are like, if you went to like just a regular Baptist church and was like, hey, do you think it was okay for them to bomb these abortion clinics? They're gonna be like, hell no, that was terrible, right? Like I don't know. In my experience, first of all, I go do the same thing. On the flip, it seems like there's much more of this level of like acceptance of the baseline of violence. Like, oh, vandalizing someone because they own a Tesla is totally fine because fuck Elon and they support him by buying this kind of shit. Like, it's just like, or fuck you, you're transphobic because XYZ. Let's fucking throw a drink at you. If you're walking down the street, like, but I don't think that there's many as like that doesn't happen as much, in my opinion, from the Republicans, and like not from my experience, from what I'm seeing, like online.
I mean, I feel like here's the thing. I feel like it's different if we're discussing kind of small stakes things versus large stakes things. Because like in what you were saying, we went from comparing a bombing to like bombings and being like, okay, you know, because I mean, I'm sure like more people, as you said, like more people would say, oh, you know, if, you know, at least the clinic is shut down, or, oh, well, if they have a place that sanctions murder, what did they think was going to happen or whatever? I'm pretty sure there's plenty of people who say that while condemning violence. As I said about this situation, I'm sure, like, I'm not sure if the people who you're talking about legitimately were saying, yeah, the bombings were good, but at least they were comparing bombings to bombings. Then we go to talking about Tesla vandalizing somebody's truck, which a lot of the vandalism that's happening is really low stakes shit, and then throwing a drink at somebody which is also low stakes in comparison to like,
Yeah,
again,
I mean,
like,
it's
you
all
know,
low stakes,
bombing.
but like, do you agree that something low stakes can like spark something pretty like hefty? Like, throw a drink.
Anything can happen, but I mean, speech can spark that as well. So I feel like we're talking about low stakes to low stakes and then high stakes, like as far as the damage to property or whatever. Because obviously, more people are going to say, yeah, if somebody was yelling, I don't know, like super like transphobic or racist stuff at somebody, and the person threw a drink at them, that's different than like if they like.
That would be one thing. That would be one thing. Yeah, let's just follow that scenario out, and then say the guy that was originally saying the transphobic stuff, like, gets in their face and then gets shot. Right. So the bad guy that was yelling the bad things got shot by the person that was, you know, threw the drink originally, and then they were like, "Oh, I feared for my life. This guy got in my face now, and he shot him." Okay, I'd probably be on the trans person side on that situation, right? Based off everything, you know, you're going. However, what happens next? Oh, well, now 5 people get involved. Now we have a mass shooting, you know, here at this area, or like maybe the cops get involved, turns to a riot. Like, I'm just saying, like, it's this level of acceptance that's like, oh, we're gonna go straight to violence, like of some kind, to like execute a point. Like there's a meme within like the Republican circles, at least on TikTok, where it's like you go and you just like wear your MAGA hat and you go to like the anti-rally, right? It used to, you'd have the protest and be the anti-protest, and it's like, we guarantee it, just film it, you're going to be attacked physically. You know, because it's like a meme that they're gonna like, oh, versus if you like wear Biden gear to like the Republican rally, they're gonna be like, you know, you're wrong, buddy. And they might cuss you out, but they're gonna walk off. Like, have you seen this like meme like at all? Like, do you think there's any validity to this? Like,
I don't know. I've seen a lot of the soy pills videos, and I'm pretty sure he didn't get beat up at most of the Trump rallies. Even though I think at least some of them he went as open Kamala or Biden.
Well, that's what I'm
supporter.
saying. He did not get beat. He didn't get beat up.
Oh, sorry. Oh, no, you're right. Yeah.
He's saying that the Trump supporters are going to get beat up. I'm not sure. I mean, again, like
Don't give you a hard time.
can
I don't
find
think they're gonna like
arguments on like either side of, like, we can find examples of this, like from when we're talking about people getting heckled, people getting like cussed out, then to people getting assaulted, because again, we can like find at each level examples on either side, and without any sort of like data on this, obviously, especially in the world we live in with algorithms and social media videos, you're going to see more that is confirming your bias, and I'm going to see more that's confirming my bias. So I can't say what's more or less. I literally cannot.
Yeah, and I live in Seattle, so I definitely can't say there's more or less.
More or less. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know. Y'all don't. Okay, let's just try this. All right. Do you think there's a problem? We talked about this a little bit before with the leaders, like with. I feel like the Dems. Okay, let's go with another example here. We talked about. I said we weren't going to talk about BLM too much, but Maxine Waters, for example, you calling for the violence. Like, it seemed like the Chaz was pretty well accepted. You know, bailing people out, the bail fund that they had going for that. Is that like not basic implications? Like, hey, we are advocating for violence if we don't get our way. Is that not exactly what that is?
I always thought that being against bail is like, because bail is an official thing that you have. It's an official part of our justice system. So people advocating to pay bail, like, I mean, then I don't know, maybe like what's wrong with, like, you're arguing to what, like, follow a legal process that is a part of our legal system? I don't know. I always found that part of it
like
stupid.
a big premise of like in a lot of the BLM movement is that a lot of these bail things are like unfair and like disproportionately affect low income people or whatever. And it's like, regardless of whether you believe that, like the goal a lot of times wasn't just like, oh, let's let violent criminals out. It was, we think the system is unfair and we're gonna help people who.
But it was
have
because
been
then it was
affected
literally
by
people kicked up
I
for
will say,
rioting.
even when it came
That's
to
violent criminal, right?
Chaz, even when it came to Chaz and Chop, or Chaz or Chop or whatever, like the reason it started was because people fled, not because people were like there was no violent uprising that led to Chaz. that local police station fled from the area before they were
why did they
harmed in any
flee?
way.
Why did they flee?
Look, I'm saying they had people going towards them, but they weren't physically harmed at all. They left the police station.
Yeah, but
they
why?
Just did.
Yeah, why did they do that?
Because they were being surrounded.
Yeah, because they were avoiding the violence that was coming, right? Like they didn't want like some international incident where they shot protesters and the protesters attacking a police station, right? Like that's why
They had
left.
literally spent that whole weekend like tasing and gassing tons of protesters in all of Seattle. There were tons of videos of them performing the teapot method against different areas of protesters. So like I just don't even know what you're trying to talk about right now. There are tons of nonviolent ways for police officers who are allegedly trained to be able to de-escalate situations, who are armed, apparently, who just flee the area. I guess to me, it's just, I don't know. I don't think that's enough to say that like Chaz and Chop existed only because they were going out and assaulting police officers. I just think it's ridiculous to say that it was just the fact that people were being like brutal and violent towards other individuals. Nobody was harmed in that.
There was a murder. There was a murder in and they were destroying property. What do you mean?
In Chaz and Chop, I said that the establishment of Chaz and Chop didn't occur as a result of violence.
Right. Which obviously like,
that was my whole point.
Wasn't getting like any sort of like people were getting hurt and not getting medical care, obviously,
yes,
because
that was a problem.
That was a big issue. I mean, I'm not like a big fan of like, that sort of like action. I don't think that was helpful. I think that was
I agree. I just think framing it like it was some sort of like violent attack on anything when what happened was protesters protested and then cops left the area. I think, even establishing that in any regard as some sort of like violent takeover of the area is just not recognizing the reality of how Chaz and Chop was established in the first place. Yes, there were issues after it was established, but it had already been established at that point.
I mean, I don't know about any of that, because even with your own situation you described, you agreed that there had been incidents with the police and the protesters leading up to that, correct? Like previous
with other police officers at other stations,
right? Other
with
stations,
other
right? And
yes.
so then the protesters,
where the police officers were
right, and the protesters then moved en masse towards this police station, and the police.
No, these are other protesters. There was just a protest. There was like a citywide protest.
I'm reading from their thing,
No,
and it literally, the chief at the time states, "We did it in order to de-escalate the situation and rebuild trust." So like they decided like to move away because it was a violent escalating situation. Like that's what they're implying.
I understand. I'm not confused by that. What I am saying is when you phrase Chaz or Chop as there was a violent event that occurred that led to the establishment of Chaz, you are wrong and you are spreading misinformation about Chaz. That is incorrect.
I think that the violence happened like within it afterwards, and we're talking about violence when we talk about. I think that before its establishment there was violence. After its establishment there was violence, but technically, like when we talk about like the establishment itself, it was on the back of violence, but it wasn't itself. Like it's not like they went into the police station and started like getting at cops or anything there. But obviously, if the cops weren't under threat of danger, they wouldn't have left.
Yeah. I just think I think when we're talking about violent acts and you're talking about actually assaulting people directly, you're talking about throwing things at people and you're talking about shooting people in the streets, and then you bring up the establishment of Chaz itself, that did not occur. So I think it is genuinely spreading misinformation.
I object to that. I know somebody that had a business in the Chaz, and it was basically firebombed. Like whenever y'all are saying there's no damage or no business, and you're saying, and there were literal attacks on officers. I didn't
say there was no
leading up to this, and then the cops go, "Hey, we're gonna move out because we don't want to de-escalate."
Other cops from other stations and other precincts, there were other incidents.
Okay, so if I am in a city, let's just say there's a city with 4 distinct zones, and in 3 of the zones there are incidents, violent incidents, and I'm in the 4th zone, And all of a sudden now mass protest is coming towards me, and we've had other incidents in every other zone that have been very violent, and the mayor goes, or the police chief goes, hey, abandon that station because this is a big ass protest. It's bigger than the other ones, and we don't want any more violence. Is that not exactly what we're talking about when we're saying, oh, we're in fear of leftist violence, and then they establish a cop-free zone where there's vandalism
What
and
caused all
people
the violence
damaged?
that occurred in the protests before that? Was it all protests attacking police officers?
No,
or was
it's
it
both.
police
It's
officers
both.
targeting protesters and actually inciting violence that causes riots?
Well, it's
Like, I understand what you're
both.
saying, but when you're talking about these violent interactions previously, there are cases where police officers instigate violence in protests specifically for this reason. So yes, I understand what you're saying, but again, when you relate something like that to someone being shot in the streets, I agree. I agree there was a de-escalationary tactic taken. I think that was good. I don't think that the violence that happened in Chaz afterwards, when they made it impossible for emergency services to get to people, I think that was wrong. But when you equate people being shot in the streets for being Israeli to police officers deciding to leave a police station and then the people that live there taking over and blocking streets, those are just two different situations. I think it's
Agree with
wrong
that.
to say that they're the same. I think you can talk about the political tension that's a problem. I think you can talk about protests being a problem. But I think when you equate those two situations, it is actively misinformation.
Yeah, I mean, I would say they're different. The one with the Chaz is like an armed insurrection. I would say, yeah, it's much worse. If we're being honest, yeah, I agree. They are different.
That was not an armed insurrection. It was not.
If you're an armed force and you leave an area due to the threat of violence. By choice, right, okay, so if I move my people out by choice to avoid armed protests becoming more violent if I stay, that is an acknowledgement that there will be violence due to these people if we
does
stay.
That mean January 6th was also an insurrection? If you agree that this was an insurrection, does that automatically mean that
We're not talking
January
about
6th
January
was
6th.
as well, considering there were violent protesters?
We already prefaced
Considering
it.
there were violent protesters?
We already made this rule.
Yeah, this is. I'm going to say that this is literally the argument that you're making, Buckaroo, is.
That's why I already brought up the January 6th thing, because it always comes back to January 6th.
I'm going to actually, well, yeah, because it's a protest where people they had to fall back because there weren't enough cops in an area. That's another good example of that. Which I'll be saying
I'll argue
it's a
an
similar
armed riot.
argument.
I'm an armed
what
riot,
you're making,
sure. It's an armed riot, and that's why they were apprehended. But did they maintain and hold control for any extended period of time? Maybe a few hours at best. And that's a big difference between the Chaz and the January 6th. So if we want to get into it, I'll allow that it was a riot.
I was just bringing up the fact that you called it an insurrection. You called it an insurrection.
Yeah, because
so I'm responding to your claim that it is an insurrection, and I am challenging it.
Well, I mean, fine. If we want to do that, I will argue that by the standard I'm setting forth, one is an insurrection, the other is a violent riot. If we want to do that, sure. Both are bad. Both are bad. Well,
oh boy.
But one of them.
Both are insurrections, or neither of them are. You can't.
Well, no, I can, because one of them they held it for an extended period of time and said no government coming in here. The other one they were apprehended within the day. I don't
think it's about how long. It's about slowing down or stopping government processes. I mean, kicking the cops out versus making it so they couldn't certify the election, even though it was for a shorter period of time. But what I am going to say about this, I'm gonna say to you, Buckaroo, the argument that you're making about how they left the police station is like similar to the argument that people make that they were let in on January 6th because police retreated because they didn't have enough cops at the Capitol building that day. So I mean, if they retreated because they didn't have enough cops, like it still obviously counts as a violent takeover because it's the threat in numbers that has caused them to do that. Although they didn't use physical
is that actually why that they retreated though? If they retreated as a de-escalationary tactic, did they retreat because they didn't actually have enough? Because I don't think that's actually why they retreated in the first place. I think they could have handled it if they chose to use a direct violent approach. They chose not to because they recognized that wasn't the right approach.
If the cops at J6 pulled out machine gun.
agree.
Like,
I'm not
then
arguing. I'm just
they had enough
asking
cops
if
for
that-
that. I mean,
Yeah.
if they
I
just
just-
like, yeah, I don't know. I'm sorry. Like, I just, it's like
That's fine.
it's a complex situation. If
That's
we're
fine.
talking about the definition of like insurrection and stuff like that, as well as, you know, what you're talking about with protest and where the violence exactly occurred. But what I will say about this stuff, I mean, it is obviously like it's not anything that I feel like is particularly like the most effective as far as like affecting change, especially when it's not done like kind of in coordination with voting and nonviolent efforts. Because people like to bring up stuff like the civil rights movement, which there was like civil disobedience. There was obviously violent protest. That was another wing of it. And then of course there were people that were willing to vote.
Chaz was just not something that was planned or at all in any regard. It was just people blocking the street being like, we have a block. Honestly, I like knowing the neighborhood. It's the neighborhood to do that. It's like the one neighborhood to do that. I think there are issues with Chaz. I think like obviously it's not. I mean, I'm surprised it even lasted a month. I don't know how it lasted a whole month. They like put in a garden and shit like that. But I believe I can't remember if this was actually directly related to the homeless people that live in and by like Cal Anderson Park where Chaz is. But I know they just end up there. It's like a contentious area in general. It's like a very politically contentious space, I think.
Mm-hmm.
I will say, I think I'm.
Go ahead, Nalfa. Go ahead.
I think I'm open to both being insurrections. I would have to do more reading on Chaz. I didn't pay that much attention to politics in 2020, but the consequence of January 6th being successful would have been like overturning the election, which is way bigger than any consequence from occupying a few city blocks or whatever. And I mean, I know you don't want to talk about it, Gibbs, I know, but like Trump, you can criticize Kamala for posting a link to a bail fund, but Trump pardoned all the J6ers and then settled like a $30 million lawsuit with Ashley Babbitt's family. So
sounds very patriotic to me. He was out there, pardoning people for the good of the nation to let us heal. Because some of these people shouldn't have been there. That's what he was doing. He was, I actually agree with what was Ryan's take from earlier. I think that the idea, like when we were talking about these things, the potential investigation into Biden and the cover up, I was saying I think his idea about hearings and then pardoning them would be a good way. It would let people heal. Like, we can see that there was this bad thing, and now we can fix it going forward. I think that's what he was doing with the January 6th. It was very controversial. Some people thought they shouldn't have been arrested at all. Some people, thought there was an insurrection. He was, healing us going forward. Just like I totally understand. And I argue with people like, oh, Biden pardoned his son. I'm like, bruh, if I was president, I'd pardon everybody in my family, just in case. Why? I don't give a shit. I'm not going to jail if I have the power, and they're not going to go to jail if they got that power in the future. That makes sense to me, and to argue they're not going to do that is ridiculous. Come on, it's a healing thing in some cases. In that case, I don't know. I don't see that as the same thing as what you're trying to argue. The bail fund is different because they're literally arguing for, hey, go riot. We're going to do this. What did Maxine Waters say exactly? It was something about violent, cause violence. And then another was no justice, no peace. And then as they're burning places down, come on. And then they're bailing these people out who they have on camera burning the 7-Eleven down. You don't think that's tangibly in endorsing violence? Oh yeah, we just bailed the guy out that burned this guy's 7-Eleven down. He didn't even have anything to do with what's going on. Why did Ahmed lose his 7-Eleven? It's some bullshit. I don't know.
I think the intentions are almost opposite from what you said. I think Trump basically, I think he thought it'd be a win with a lot of his base to pardon people, and I think he also did basically just want to reward his supporters. And I think I mentioned this earlier. I think a lot of the justification for bailing people out in BLM was not because people wanted violent criminals on the street, but because they felt like the system was unfair and they wanted to help people that they thought were screwed over by the unfair police or justice system.
Sus. Sounds sus. I don't know if I trust that. I think
I mean,
go ahead,
I don't know.
Katya.
I feel like there's definitely something super super kind of like ironic and scummy about being like, okay, I know that my side did this, but you know what? We're all gonna. I'm deciding. You know what? We're all gonna heal. I need to remember that one next time I really fuck with somebody and do something terrible to him. I'm gonna just hit him with the. Well, we should just forgive each other. Let's all heal.
Oh,
I
I
mean,
got a
that's
better
like a
one.
life hack.
Oh,
That's so base.
Oh, I'll even give you a better one than that. If you hang out with Latinas quite a bit, you'll hear this one. I felt that it was the right thing to do. You're welcome. That'll get you. Yeah, just goes that logic. Excuse is cheating. That's they're like, well, I felt like it was the right thing to do at the time. Wait, what is that supposed to mean? You know?
Wait, like about cheating in a relationship?
I've heard it for that. I've heard it for like an excuse because they called somebody fat, like they didn't want to wear a dress, or like I've heard it because they were just any reason you want. I felt like I felt like it was the right thing to do. Just band-aid
like
right on the.
I guess just being rude or something or making a stupid mistake. I feel like, but like. If you're in a relationship with somebody, I don't think the only reason mental state to say that you felt like cheating was the right thing to do is something that's indicative of why you shouldn't want to be in a relationship with them. But okay,
I'm just telling you, it's what you hear often, and like they can argue it to the death. Like, listen, how can I go know that if this was not the right thing to do if I didn't trust in my feelings? You have to trust your feelings. It's trust in your gut, Gibbs. It's trust in your gut. Like, and of course, I'm doing it in a redneck accent. I'm not doing it with the fucking Latina bullshit. But yeah. That's it works every time. It's the best gaslighting expression I've ever heard.
Yeah, so that's crazy. Yeah. That's why I try to avoid thinking with my feelings as much as possible. Only bad things come of it. No.
Yes. Yes, I feel like that's the case with a lot of this. Like I watched the thing just yesterday, and they were talking about on TikTok right now, the rise of like pro assassination content is like extremely high because it's like inflammatory and it goes towards the algorithm. People are like, we should take out Trump and shit. And like there was that poll that like we talked about a little bit, was it on Monday, that came out where like 55% of Dems are like I actually looked up, it's all 55% of all Dems in this poll are were willing to say that we should assassinate Trump. Like, you don't think that this is a inherent problem amongst leftism? That 55% of people think we should assassinate Trump on the left? Like, I mean, come on, y'all don't think it's a problem?
I think it's a problem, especially because I think that it gives a real indication that people feel like the only way that he like could be held accountable for anything in any way would be literally that, because holding him legally accountable didn't work, trying to impeach him didn't work. Like he's talked before about running for third terms or trying to, eliminate or pause certain rights, even those that are within the Constitution, stuff like habeas corpus, blah, 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 blah. And yeah, I think it's concerning that people have like little kind of faith in our governmental processes and our judicial processes, that if something is that dire, that would be something we have to resort to. And I think that that's been, due to eroding of these processes that's been going on for years at this point.
Well, you look like you're about to say something there. Nathan, go ahead.
I don't know. I don't. Quite frankly, I don't know if I believe 55% of old Dems. I would believe 55% of like all young Dems, but I do think a lot of that is just a rise of like a entirely anti-establishment, anti-electoral like leftism, and I've never liked that. I don't think I've ever justified that. I do find that concerning. But I don't know what to do with that, man.
Yeah, you guys would love my mother, because my mom, she jokes about like that. Sometimes she likes Destiny, which is very funny to me, and she always votes in like every election. And yeah, she's 66 and still on that grind set, I guess, of being like a political firebrand, I suppose.
Yes, I see. I find it funny how the how many older people are really getting into the online space of watching like politics, like in this kind of
Yeah.
stuff. Like every day I find more and more people, and they're like of the like 70s, 80s. Like my parents are in their 60s, and they're like, "Oh yeah, we were watching so and so the other day." And I'm like, how the fuck do you even know who that is? Like, and I like watching YouTube and stuff as opposed to like traditional news service. Like, I mean, I wonder if like I guess this is the future. The all the talking heads are just gonna be online people, and like networks are gonna die. I mean, do y'all foresee that happening?
I mean, I do, and I foresee that that's been happening, which is, again, in the last panel, what I was lamenting about, that it seems like the right, with stuff like Charlie Kirk, with stuff like Ben Shapiro, we had situations where they basically had a monopoly on this alternate media, and like so many, Democrats just stayed with our MSNBC, our CNN, and again, like those things kind of like it cost us a lot of support because it's the future's now, and we can't live in 1980 forever.
Yeah, I was
as much as I wish.
I actually looked up this this tweet that I'd seen recently. I'll have to scroll back to it again, but it's the total following of the top right-leaning and left-leaning shows. And I'll show this picture now. The red is obviously right-leaning, and the left is all blue, the blue is all left-leaning.
Have you gone through that?
So that's just that. I found the links, but yeah, it's like Joe Rogan's the biggest, and you have Ben Shapiro.
Yeah, but hold on. Have
Russell
you
Brand,
have you read
all of that?
Yeah, have you seen like what they're calling left wing on some of those people? Like they have Piers Morgan as a right wing, and I'm like, Piers Morgan is not right wing. Like they have.
He is right leaning.
Yeah, he is.
Yes, he is. They have the Young Turks.
Bro, this is
Midas
insanity.
Touch.
He got kicked out the BBC for being
Trevor
too
Noah.
conservative, and he's only
Bro,
gotten more conservative.
He is like
Hassan
a super
Abi,
liberal, bro. He wants gun
H3,
control to the max. Like
The Breakfast Club.
Right.
He's just British. Let's just leave him out of this conversation, okay? He's just some fucking weird
like
British
they have
guy.
Joe Rogan.
He's
Joe
saying dumb
Rogan's
British.
Joe Rogan's a Bernie guy. Like how is Joe Rogan a right
Joe
wing?
Rogan's crazy
He
now.
went crazy.
Joe Rogan's crazy.
I used to like him during COVID. I guess the ivermectin or whatever else fried his brain. Or I guess he
CTE,
and
bro. He
RFK
gets
like shared the worm or something, and he's gone a little nutty buddy like over here. And there's many cases of that, and
Well, he ended up
he
he ended up being right about the ivermectin. Did you see the interview where he interviewed the doctor who called him like a charlatan for that, and then the guy goes, "Well, I'm actually started taking a 10 milligram dose of ivermectin to stop the COVID." And he's like, "You are admitting you did the thing after you literally called me a fucking like crazy horse dewormer guy on national television on MSNBC, and you're admitting on my show today that you are taking this medicine to do exactly what I said." Like, and he's like, "Yeah, did y'all not see that interview?" Like, I feel like a lot of time he gets called.
but-
Oh, I'll find it. It's pretty crazy. Like, but
Joe Rogan said Trump was horrible during his first term, and he's clearly done about face on that one. So clearly, people can change their minds.
Yeah, I mean, I think obviously Joe Rogan caused more people to vote for Trump than caused people to vote for Kamala or Biden. I don't think I would find it very hard to believe otherwise. Even if you don't want to call him holistically right wing, he clearly serves that purpose in effect. But
I mean, come on. Like, this is kind of like the argument that Tyler makes all the time. Is y'all are like, yeah, these are right wing. Like, Trump's not even right wing. Like, I heard the other day, y'all were like, oh, this is the most right wing guy. I'm like, this guy's like center right at most.
Vance, his vice president is literally an evangelical, like born and raised evangelical.
He was advocating for a sovereign
Christian.
wealth fund the other day. Come on.
Speaker of the House, Catholic convert. Speaker of the House was an evangelical Christian. Peter Thiel.
Have you seen some of the stuff in this big new bill?
Like you're trying. There's no way you can tell me that these people aren't all obviously on the right. Obviously conservatives on the right.
I know non-fon's excited about this big new bill. I was reading.
They're conservatives on the right. They just lob on the knob of every other billionaire they meet. That's
what do you mean? You're not excited for the baby fund, like the baby fund that's coming out, the new sovereign wealth fund for babies?
no, I don't. That's not really a sovereign.
Yeah, or
wealth
whatever they're
fund,
calling it.
but-
It's a bond or trust fund or something for every baby going to be put out.
I think we should just move to universal saving or like a tax-free universal savings account. I don't really think maybe it's a net benefit, but I really don't like we keep adding like a bunch of like random tax-free accounts, a bunch of random like deductions for things. Like I think we should just massively simplify the tax code and have like all your savings be deductible
Bureaucracy
essentially.
is bad, though. Don't worry.
But look, I mean, Gibbs, I think like even if Trump's policy is center right, which I don't grant, but like even if it is, I don't think like no center right person is pushing unitary executive theory to the extent that Trump does it. Like no.
Wait, hold on. Do you think Bush was like extreme right?
Here's the thing that he was a
like
fucking neocon.
Yeah, they were the
and
fathers
now
of
we're talking
unitary
about
executive.
the populist right. Obviously, if we're going to do the right versus left thing, obviously the populist right is going to have more what is considered a traditionally left-wing belief if we're going off the paradigm from before. If we're going at the paradigm from before because of the belief in like protectionism or the belief in certain other things, the belief against free trade, against certain other obviously, those things you can say that he's not right wing
so
there, but
that
I
means
feel like
he's
we have a different paradigm.
Hold on. That would mean he's more to the center then, right? If he adopts some left-leaning policies or takes, and then that means you move overall to the center. Wouldn't that be correct?
I don't know.
No, I just think it makes you like you said, like a populist rightist. Like you can have,
He changed his ideology.
Did he though? Because it sounds like the same ideology he's been espousing since the 80s.
His ideology is being a fucking con man. Let's be honest.
I wish he kept the same social beliefs. What happened to that?
He's just a fucking con man. You guys bought the snake oil.
It's been great. I'm a big fan
You're
of
just
snake oil so far.
wait and see. It's gonna prove worthless.
That's what I keep getting told. I keep getting told wait and see, and then all the things I want to happen keep happening. So I'm like, okay.
Well, except for the drop in egg prices, right? Except for all this free
Oh no,
shit
not the eggs. Not the eggs.
The eggs, the one thing you guys were bitching about nonstop for like 6 months before the election.
They didn't give a shit.
I didn't
I know they didn't give a shit, but that's just further evidence of their desperate need to slob on the knob of billionaire con men. Okay, not my problem. Issue for them to work through.
I'll say that Trump is a 90s Democrat when he... hold on. I have no idea because I don't buy tons of eggs.
Wait, Gabe, did you say prices went
I feel like didn't egg prices go down? I mean, I do know that like
egg prices,
but also y'all are blaming Trump for the egg price thing with it was old Biden who killed what a trillion chickens or something.
I'm not blaming anybody for the egg price thing.
I feel like
up the
bird flu pandemic would be the worst thing ever.
The bird
flu is like a freaking 50% death rate, something like that. Like, yeah, I understand they don't want to play with that shit. Holy crap. That would be a hot mess if that happened. Good luck. So, I mean, what I'm going to say about this, though, is for Trump being he's got a left-wing belief, or he espouses the same belief. I don't know about that, because you know what? I remember Trump of the past was, he didn't care about gay or trans people. He, was pro-choice. Where'd that go? Can he come back to that at least? If we can't have any good economic policy?
But
Jesus
he has moved.
Christ,
Hold on,
we can't have anything.
He did do that. He even put out. He put out for the national agenda for the Republicans. They were way lighter on the anti-gay and trans stuff. It was way lighter after they did this. I'm sure Tyler could drop it. He dropped the link previously. Like he literally brought the Republican Party more to the left on those issues, across the.
But in 2016 or now?
Now, like in the most recent one, like when after he got nominated, it was a whole thing they put out. I'm sure we could find it, but yeah, they talk later if I need to. But yeah, they talked about how they made it more to the left. I don't know how, what's crazy, and I kept saying this, is if y'all really get rid of Trump, y'all are really going to get somebody that is an extreme right. And which is funny because I keep hearing how extreme right
You mean Trump like Vance?
Wait, who do you...
Oh, sorry. Vance the past 2 years. Let's not talk about anything he said before then, because you'd find a completely different man, wouldn't you?
No, not Vance. I was thinking more like an Abbott or somebody, but sure. Vance, it's fine. I think that if y'all hate Vance, then I can just imagine the left under an Abbott. That would be there would be a civil war. I truly believe if Abbott ever became president of the U.S., there would be a civil war. There's no way that the anti-gay committee would allow Abbott to go without acts of violence, major acts. Like he's too
gay community.
Yeah, like he's just too anti-LGBTQ. Like he's coming down hard on that shit. Like he would be like, I'm fighting the culture war on every fucking front, and like versus like Trump will let some of that shit go. Like that's why when people are like, oh, you're gonna get whatever. Or Vance might be a problem too. I don't know. I'm not as familiar with Vance as I am with like Abbott, but like I see like there are people that are in the Republican Party that are way more to
That
the
are
right.
unironically evil.
I mean, I don't know about evil, but they're way more to the right than Trump is. You know,
That's true. And there are people who are way more to the left than fucking Biden was. It's like, what? Oh, you elected Trump, so now you better watch out. We're going to elect a fucking Maoist next election. Like,
I mean,
okay.
maybe.
A little left for Kamala.
Well,
Really
maybe
good.
I think that like actually there's a better example of this would have been Bernie, right? Like after Clinton, well, not after Clinton, but like when they put Clinton instead of Bernie, I think Bernie honestly had like probably the best shot at that time to beat Trump because he was an answer to the same question, right? He was the populist left, and he is way more extreme than like Biden would be, right? And so it's almost like, hey, now people
Extreme.
Right?
Quotation marks around the word. Okay.
Sure. Well, I mean, I just call Abbott
He got
extreme,
rat
right?
fucked.
But like I'm talking like more the one way or the other. But I'm saying like, yeah, he got fucked. But like now I'm seeing the same thing like from the left, right? And I'm not saying this is like as a condemnation, right? Like y'all got to figure out his own shit. But like it doesn't surprise me when people are like propping up someone like AOC, who's way further to the left than say like Biden ever was, right? Like people turn a lot of times people go and look after something like that. They either look to the middle, which I think Trump is kind of an answer to, right? He's a populist middle guy kind of thing, but a little bit to the right, versus like, or they look to the far extreme. And so it makes sense to me to see people go look to like an AOC over like a Buttigieg in a lot of cases. Now I'm not saying that's going to be the final outcome, but it makes sense to me like why that look is appealing to some people or a large part group of them.
I guess your definition of centrist is like you get drunk, you have somebody spin you around a bunch of times, and then you throw darts at a political compass, and they all end up like around the edges, and then you just average it together, and it's kind of near the middle. So you're like,
isn't that how it all is? Like, I mean, that's what you kind of have to do, right? Like, if they got like one side, but hold on, if you got like predominantly right-leaning like views, right, and then you have like, well, except for these, and they're like big ones, like I don't know, let's go with gun control, right? Trump is pretty anti-gun, right? That's pretty like middle of the ground. Like he's like over here, like, oh, I want to put gun assault rifle bans back. He's like okay with red flag laws. He's fairly anti-gun, right? I feel like, yeah, he might be right-leaning on all these issues, but that definitely brings him to the center when you have a strong take on something that's traditionally a right-wing value, and your take is pretty far left of center on it. Like, I don't know how you disagree that you can't just go down the list and be like, he's got an aggregate score of, like, I don't know, 10, and then, on this issue, he's, like, a negative 10, so that brings his average out, like,
So, like, you know what? I guess people can't call me a leftist extremist or crazy fucking commie or whatever anymore because my belief on guns should, like, throw it to the middle. I'm a centrist now, guys. Don't you worry about it.
Well, no, but commies traditionally have the same outlook on guns as, like anybody that's on the far right. Y'all like violence.
Oh my god, leftist Gibbs?
Hey, listen, I'm just saying, commies at least agree on the gun thing. That's one thing.
Yeah.
They agree on the right-leaning side.
I think, again, a lot of what Trump says, a lot of these, whatever centrist positions you think he has, just fit more cleanly into like anti-establishment things than it does into like left versus right. Like I think people elected Trump because they don't like the answers or they don't like how the current establishment is going. And Trump says he wants to break things, and I'm sure part of that breaking things is changing gun control regulations. But I don't think the reason he's doing that is because he has this like left-wing view on guns. I think it's just because.
He's pretty left-wing on guns. Yeah, he's pretty heavily.
He's not left-wing. He's authoritarian.
I'm left-wing on guns.
What's
the
that?
reason why I believe in something is different.
No, I'm pro-guns. I just don't have one because I don't have one. Just don't have one.
Yeah,
I have like.
I
Yeah, it just
highly
seems like
recommend
an
everybody buy.
expensive investment.
Nah, they're the best. You need them. Lots of them. All
I
over
wish
your
I could
house
do
at
the
all
like
times.
guns on the wall behind you, but I have like a sliding glass door back there, so I
Nah,
can't really
see,
put anything. It
this
sucks.
is bad. That's the opposite.
I have like.
I have guns everywhere.
10
Nobody can find none of them. That's the secret. You gotta like
Just
stash
like
them.
That is actually kind of based, but
Yeah.
I'm just a frugal gal. Okay, I've been living a frugal lifestyle, ish. I've been trying to live a frugal lifestyle. I'm not about to go get a gun. Like the one thing that I'll probably never fucking use. Okay, I'm still trying not to buy jackets I'm only going to wear out once.
Well, yeah, I mean that's a problem here. We only can wear them one day a year anyway. Yeah,
True.
it's terrible. Well, on that note, let's wrap this up here. I'm exhausted here from these two panels. I know it's a little shorter than usual tonight, but I think we've circled the drain a little bit on this one. Let's go ahead, Nava. Why don't you lead us out? Give us outros, where to find you, what you got going on.
Yeah, I'm non-fun. I'm a liberal streamer. You can come watch my streams on Twitch, Kick, and Twitter at nonfun420, and I also stream to YouTube at nonfun, where you can watch me defend the establishment. Also, on my YouTube channel is a bunch of old debates, a bunch of debates like this, a bunch of more heated ones as well. You should go check those out. I'm going to be streaming for a while yet still. So
fantastic. Check him out. He's a regular here. He's a good egg. Yeah, one day we'll make him a conservative. I think it's going to be the economics that'll get him once he gets rich. That's the strategy I have. Yeah, what you got, Rebecca? What do you got?
Well, I was going to say, I'd just like to mention Gibbs, along with many other people, are convinced I'm actually secretly conservative. I'd love for you guys to think on that for a minute. But I'm big Papa Buckaroo. I'm not conservative. I'll never be conservative. I'm a leftist. Tried and true. I have been for as long as I can remember. My whole family is leftists. I love welfare, and I love supporting the whole community, not just rich people. Big Papa Buckaroo, Twitter, YouTube, eventually Twitch.
Fantastic.
That's it.
Let's go to Katya.
Yeah, hi, I'm Premier Katya on social media. I am tired after this being my second panel of the night. The first one got a little wild, but you know what? Thank you for having me on. Gibbs has his more libertarian, sometimes more like left-wing social beliefs every once in a while. Maybe we'll get him one day. Who knows?
Yeah, see, I'll tell you what's more likely. It's me getting y'all to come over here than the other way, because y'all want my money, and I like my money quite a bit. It's a problem. Always.
Why would I want your money when there are so many
billionaires? Something.
Yeah, I was gonna say there are so many billionaires whose money I really, really want and think we all have some right to. So you're not
you pay your taxes.
You're not the person whose money I'm trying to get to.
Yeah, but there's other people that want my money or my land. It's a whole thing. We're gonna raid Non-Fawn here since he has been nice to us to wait here. All right, everybody. It's been fun. It's been good. I'm going to figure out my life now and have some fun. We'll see y'all next week on probably Monday or probably this weekend. I think Sunday I have a Coach Kurt Stadium, so we'll be here this weekend doing stuff. We're going to Non-Fawn now. Y'all enjoy the rest of y'all's night. Enjoy some excitement. Y'all be good. Yes.
Good night.